Chapter 581. The grand formation here was a concealment grand formation and a defensive grand formation. The two grand formations were perfectly combined. It could be seen that the person who set up this grand formation had quite a high level of attainment in the Tao of formations. He was more powerful than Xie Yunhan, but there was still a gap between him and Xie Yunhan. Therefore, it was not difficult for Lu Yi to sneak into such an array. At the place where the array flags were embedded, the spiritual power completely stopped flowing. Lu Yi raised his hand and put away the array flags. His figure flashed and rushed into the array. After he left, without the interference of the array flags, the spiritual power on the light screen of the array began to flow slowly. After entering the array, Lu Yi immediately hid his figure and looked around vigilantly. There was no danger. Everything in this forbidden area was clear at a glance. This was because this space was not too big. In a radius of about 20 feet, there was a lone grave. In front of the grave, there was a stone tablet. Not far from the grave, there was an ancient and simple thing that was only a few feet tall. It looked like an altar. This was the forbidden area? Lu Yi frowned. Under the enhancement of the Insight Spirit inscription, he did not see anything particularly noteworthy. He strolled forward and walked to the stone tablet of the grave. Under the moonlight, the words on the stone tablet were imprinted in his eyes. Master, Lei Jingyin's tomb. With only this line of words, Lei Jingyin should be the name of the person buried in this grave. However, the word master inevitably made him think. From what Xie Yunhan said before, this forbidden area had existed for at least a dozen years. The person in the grave must have died for a long time. However, the tombstone looked very clean and there was not a speck of dust on it. There was not even a weed on the grave. It seemed that someone often came to pay their respects and clean the grave. In the entire Fox Immortal Valley, the only one who could enter here was the fox demon. Lu Ye's eyes flickered for a moment. He no longer paid attention to the grave and looked at the altar. Lu Yi could tell at a glance that this altar was something that had been around for a long time. It was very simple and unadorned. Lu Yi walked up to the altar and looked around, only to see that the altar was covered in complicated lines. The entire surface of the altar seemed to be covered in a profound array. Lu Yi stared at it for a moment, but still couldn't figure out what this array was. He more or less had some attainments in the array Tao. No matter how complicated an array formation was, even if he had never come into contact with it, he would still be able to see some things. He couldn't see anything. Either these complicated patterns weren't formations, or the profoundness of the things on them was completely beyond his understanding. Looking carefully for a while, Lu Yi suddenly found that there was a groove in each of the four sides of the altar. Lu Yi was no stranger to this item. Generally speaking, these kinds of grooves needed to be filled with spirit stones, such as the spirit gathering array in many sections. Therefore, if he wanted to figure out what this altar was for, all he needed to do was to place some spirit stones in the groove. Naturally, Lu Yi would not be so rash. If he were to do so, it was highly likely that he would alarm the cultivators within Immortal Fox Valley. When that happened, he would definitely be caught red-handed. He could not help but feel a little disappointed. The fox demon had designated this place as a forbidden area. He had thought that there was some incredible secret hidden here. Who would have thought that there was only a lone grave and an ancient altar? He had no way to determine what the altar was used for. It was a wasted trip. Just as he was about to leave, there was suddenly a strange movement. Lu Ye's expression changed and he immediately cast the concealment and aura concealing spirit inscriptions on himself. He stood on the altar and did not dare to move. A seductive figure suddenly appeared in front of him. It was the fox demon. Lu Yi secretly cursed his bad luck. He had seen that the tombstone was spotless and there was not even a blade of grass on the grave. He knew that people often came here to offer their condolences. Who would have thought that he would bump into it in the middle of the night? Now that he was blocked, if not for the support of the spirit inscriptions, he would definitely have been exposed. Under the moonlight, the fox demon quietly walked to the tombstone and looked down. Her face was slowly shrouded in sadness. A moment later, there was a soft sobbing sound. Tears flowed down the corners of her eyes, leaving deep marks on her face. The fox demon threw herself on the tombstone and cried out sorrowfully. Her mouth was mumbling something. Lu Yi only heard the words Master, Xian, and I'm so tired. As for the rest, he could not hear clearly. He could not help but feel lucky. The fox demon was in a mournful mood at the moment, and she probably did not expect that someone in the Fox Immortal Valley would disobey her orders and come here in the middle of the night. Otherwise, at such a close distance, even if Lu Yi had cast the concealment and aura concealing spirit inscriptions on himself, it was not impossible for him to be discovered. After crying for a long time, the fox demon raised her hand to wipe the corners of her eyes and carefully wiped the clean tombstone. She took a deep breath and her full chest rose high. The sorrow on her face disappeared and was replaced by endless resentment and resentment. Even her originally gentle tone became extremely eerie. Master, it won't take too long. In another month, I will be able to avenge you. This time, I will not fail. As if because she was too excited when she said these words, her demon essence surged all over her body. Under the moonlight, a few hairy tails condensed from demon essence suddenly appeared behind her coquettish figure, swaying gracefully. From Lu Ye's point of view, this scene revealed a gloomy beauty. She affectionately and reluctantly stared at the tombstone for a moment. When her mood and demon essence calmed down, she turned and left. She passed through the array that enveloped this place and disappeared. Lu Yi stood quietly on the altar, motionless. It was not until a full hour later that he softly called, Yi. Yi's figure appeared. It's safe outside. Lu Yi nodded and immediately walked out. When he came in from the outside, he had to use some means to sneak in, but when he left, there was no obstruction from the array. After a while, he quietly returned to his pavilion. Recalling the scene he had just seen, Lu Yi frowned. Previously, through the name of the immortal Fox Valley, he had speculated that the Lord's true form was a fox demon. Today, after seeing the strange phenomenon caused by the other party's demon essence rampaging, he was even more certain of his original speculation. That was indeed a fox demon, but it was not an ordinary fox demon because the other party did not only have one tail, but a total of 6. Was it the heavenly fox race? And it was a 6-tailed heavenly fox. No wonder it had the strange ability to control people's minds. If the other party was the heavenly fox race, then it made sense. Although the heavenly fox race could not be compared to the 4 sacred beasts, it was also a strange beast with innate mystical powers. According to Lu Ye's knowledge, heavenly foxes at the Cloud River tier generally only had 2 or 3 tails. Thus, even if they had special innate mystical powers, they could not reach the level of controlling people's minds. At most, they could slightly confuse people's minds. As long as one's mind was strong enough, one could quickly escape. A fox demon with 6 tails was an anomaly in the heavenly fox race. Under normal circumstances, a 6-tailed heavenly fox's strength was comparable to the divine ocean tier. Although this trip did not yield any practical gains in the Forbidden Land, they had coincidentally seen the true body of the fox demon, so it could not be considered as a complete loss. However, this kind of gain was not particularly useful in the present situation. Lu Yi suddenly spoke up in the darkness. That fox demon seems very pitiful. How is she pitiful? Lu Yi asked in exasperation. The pitiful ones are the cultivators who have been trapped here. Their minds have been controlled by her, and they are dead set on following her. Her master is dead. Yi's eyes were red. She wants to avenge her master. Lu Yi turned to look at her, only to feel that this little girl's emotions were too sensitive. The fox demon's master had been dead for at least a dozen years, so what was she crying for? He wrinkled her nose and said, If you also die one day, Hooper and I will definitely think of a way to avenge you. Lu Yi could not help but laugh. Hooper and I have formed a life origin technique. If I die, Hooper will also be finished, and you will also be finished. What's there to avenge? Everyone will go to the Yellow Springs together, and the journey will not be lonely. Yi's cheeks puffed up. Anyway, that fox demon is so pitiful. After saying that, she stomped her feet and plunged into Hoopo's body, unwilling to pay any attention to Lu Yi. Lu Yi was speechless. In the darkness, his eyes slowly sank. The The fox demon had said that she would be able to avenge her dead master within a month, but the question now was, who was the enemy? Lu Yi originally did not know why the fox demon had gathered so many cultivators, but now it seemed that the situation was very clear. She had always been thinking of ways to avenge her master, but it was impossible to do so with her own strength, so she needed to gather cultivators who had entered the depths of Great Mang Mountains. Moreover, so many years had passed, so the fox demon must have acted more than once. She must have acted before, but unfortunately, all of them failed. The deaths of the cultivators under her command must be related to this matter. Right now, there were more than 80 cultivators in Fox Immortal Valley, and 15 of them were at the 9th order. Besides Lu Yi and Li Baxian, the rest were all at the 6th order and above. If such a force were to be brought out, even if they could not sweep through the Cloud River battlefield, they could at least occupy a part of it and dominate it. However, the fox demon had not acted yet. Either she was not confident, or she was waiting for an opportunity. No matter which, her enemy's strength was not to be underestimated. Looking at the entire Cloud River battlefield, there was only one possibility for her enemy to be so cautious. Lu Yi hurriedly took out the map and checked the label on it. After a short while, his eyes fixed on a line of labels. Overlord Monster Beast, Berserk Giant Ape. Lu Yi's eyelids twitched. If things were as he thought, then it would be troublesome. He did not know how strong a Cloud River Overlord Monster Beast was. However, he had experienced the strength of a Spirit Stream Overlord Monster Beast. It was a strength that completely exceeded the scope of the Spirit Stream realm. He himself was an overlord existence as a cultivator. It could be said that under the same realm, he was invincible. The strength of Fox Immortal Valley was indeed extraordinary, but it was hard to say who would have the last laugh against an overlord monster beast. Lu Yi suddenly felt a headache coming on. Should he try to knock Li Baxian out and directly take him away? However, not to mention whether he had a chance of succeeding, if he failed, he would definitely expose some of his things. At that time, no one would be able to escape. Even if he really knocked Li Baxian out, the soul secret technique would always be a hidden danger. Chapter 582. Every day passed peacefully. He would patrol the valley's spell formations with Xie Yunhan, inscribe spirit tattoos on 10 cultivators, and then practice his saber techniques with Xia Liang. The cycle repeated itself. If it weren't for the fact that the fox demon had mentioned revenge, this kind of life would have been quite good. 9 days later, all the cultivators in the valley had received spirit tattoos, and all of them were defensive spirit tattoos. During this time, Lu Yi had a feast for his eyes. After finishing his work, Lu Yi went to find Xia Liang and prepared to practice his saber techniques with him. Unexpectedly, Xia Liang said, "I've already taught you the basics. You'll have to slowly comprehend the rest through life and death battles. Simple guidance won't be of much use." After all, there were only so many basics to saber techniques. Xia Liang had taught Lu Yi everything he knew in the past 10 days, and there really wasn't anything else he could teach Lu Yi. The most important thing to improve one's saber techniques was not guidance, but the accumulation of experience through battle. Everyone's saber techniques also needed to be slowly refined through bloody battles. In the past 10 days, Lu Yi could feel that his saber techniques had improved greatly. Compared to before, his foundation was more solid, and his understanding of saber techniques had also reached a higher level. It could be said that just from this point alone, his strength had increased by at least 10%. This was undoubtedly a huge gain. Therefore, even though there were many grudges between him and Xia Liang, just based on his guidance these days, Lu Yi solemnly bowed. "Many thanks, fellow Taoist Xia." He just didn't know how Xia Liang would react if he had the chance to break free from the fox demon's control. He originally wanted to kill Lu Yi, but due to a freak combination of factors, he ended up teaching Lu Yi a lot of saber techniques. "I can't teach you the basics, but I'll teach you something else today." Saying that, Xia Liang took out his saber from his storage pouch and got into a stance. He closed his eyes and said, "Attack me." Seeing that Xia Liang was about to show off something, Lu Yi didn't hesitate. He placed his hand on the hilt of his saber and rushed towards Xia Liang. He unsheathed his saber and slashed down while keeping a close eye on Xia Liang's movements. When the Pan Mountain saber was less than a foot away from Xia Liang suddenly moved. He raised the saber in his hand and blocked the Pan Mountain saber. Lu Yi couldn't help but raise his brows. Xia Liang was a 9th-order Cloud River Realm cultivator while Lu Yi was only a 4th-order cultivator. The gap between their cultivations was huge, so Lu Yi wasn't surprised that Xia Liang was able to block his attack. What surprised him was that Xia Liang's eyes were closed, but he seemed to be able to see his attack. With the help of the recoil, Lu Yi retreated. Again! Xia Liang called out. Lu Yi rushed forward again. This time, he didn't choose to slash. Instead, he stabbed with his sword. Compared to a slash with great momentum, a stab like this was undoubtedly much more subtle. This guy was able to block his attack with his eyes closed, and he could even say that he was able to determine the direction of the attack by listening to the sound. How was he going to block this hidden stab? Contrary to Lu Ye's expectations, the saber in Xia Liang's hand suddenly moved, lightly blocking the Pan Mountain saber. At the same time, he tilted his head, causing the Pan Mountain saber to miss his neck. Lu Yi was greatly surprised. Again! Lu Yi attacked for the 3rd time, however, without exception, Xia Liang would suddenly block the attacks when they were half a foot away from him. Lu Yi didn't use his full strength, but Xia Liang being able to do this with his eyes closed was still incredible. After a dozen or so attacks, he couldn't even touch the corner of Xia Liang's clothes. Only then did he open his eyes and look at Lu Yi. Do you understand now? Perception? Mind's eye. Mind's eye? What you see with your eyes may not be true, but what you see with your mind's eye can never be false. Xia Liang explained earnestly, this is not a saber technique, but it is an auxiliary secret technique that is useful to all weapon cultivators. When you say perception, it is not completely wrong. When most weapon cultivators fight with others, they have their own perception of danger. However, mind's eye is a secret technique that surpasses perception. After a pause, he continued, now, the cultivators we come into contact with are all at the Cloud River tier, and the speed of their attacks may not be too fast, but with the increase of cultivation, there will be a day when the speed of their attacks will be difficult to catch with the naked eye. When that time comes, how will you deal with it? If you only rely on your own perception, you may not have enough time to react, but if you can cultivate the mind's eye secret technique, then it will be different. At that time, even if you can't see, with a long saber in your hand, the enemy will not be able to get close to you. The mind's eye secret technique is a secret technique unique to the Wild Saber sect, and it is similar to the Sword Heart of the North Mystery Sword sect. My attainment in this secret technique is only at the entry level, so I can only defend against attacks that are half a foot away. Lu Yi suddenly understood. No wonder every time he attacked, Xia Liang would only react when it was half a foot away. It turned out that this secret technique had a range. He asked curiously, how do you cultivate it? This was a secret technique unique to the Wild Saber sect, and only the elite disciples of the Wild Saber sect could cultivate it. If they had not fallen into the Fox Immortal Valley, Lu Yi would not have been able to come into contact with this technique. Suddenly, he remembered that when he was chasing Xia Liang, the latter's defense did give him a feeling that it was impregnable. If it were not for the fact that Xia Liang's injuries were too severe, Lu Yi would not have been able to do anything to him with just the mind's eye secret technique. Xia Liang revealed a look of reminiscence. When I first cultivated this secret technique, I was under the protection of my elders, fighting against different numbers of demonic beasts, and I was blindfolded. So if you really want to cultivate this secret technique, you have to experience it yourself, and use your body to remember the feeling of danger. After a long time, you will naturally succeed. This place does not have such conditions, so if you have the chance in the future, you can cultivate it. Lu Yi nodded slightly. With Zhou Yuntian's previous instructions, Xia Liang would never attack Lu Yi, so even if Lu Yi wanted to cultivate this secret technique, Xia Liang would not be his sparring partner. Remember, the use of the mind's eye secret technique is based on one's perception. The stronger one's perception is, the easier it is to cultivate it. Understood. The key to the strength of perception was the mind, and the strength of the mind was closely related to the soul. In short, the stronger the soul of a cultivator, the easier it was to cultivate this secret technique, and the soul was Lu Ye's strength. After bidding farewell to Xia Liang, Lu Yi returned to his house, opened the array, and had Yi stand guard nearby. Only then did he take out the breath fruit core from his storage space. Fox Immortal Valley did not have the conditions to cultivate the mind's eye secret technique because there was no suitable sparring partner, but the breath fruit core in Lu Ye's hand could provide him with the best cultivation environment. In the past, when he entered the Mirage Realm, he would desperately kill the monsters inside to hone his saber skills, but as his cultivation gradually improved, the number of times he entered the Mirage Realm gradually decreased. First, each time he entered the Mirage Realm, he would consume merit points, and second, he did not lack experience in life and death battles, so he did not need to enter the Mirage Realm to hone himself. But now, if he wanted to cultivate the mind's eye secret technique, the Mirage Realm was undoubtedly the best choice. Spending 100 merit points, Lu Yi pushed open the door and walked into the Mirage Realm, stood still, and closed his eyes. Just as he was ready, the nearby fog suddenly tumbled, and a figure rushed out, brazenly rushing at him. The power of this figure was only at the level of a 4th-order Cloud River Realm cultivator, the same as Lu Ye's cultivation. Wrapped in fog, he could not see the figure's appearance, and could not tell the gender. Normally, if he encountered such an enemy, Lu Yi could kill them with a single slash. But now, with his eyes closed, Lu Yi could only rely on his perception and some sounds to determine the enemy's movements, which was undoubtedly a huge test for him. Suddenly, a strong wind blew in his face, and Lu Yi instinctively unsheathed his saber and slashed. However, this slash did not cut anything, and instead, his abdomen was hurt by the other party. Another strong wind came, and Lu Yi turned around and slashed with his mountain saber, but still did not succeed, and pain came from his body again. A moment later, on the 2nd floor, Lu Yi opened his eyes and felt a tingling pain in his mind, causing the corners of his eyes to twitch. An enemy with the same cultivation as him, who he could usually kill with a single slash, actually killed him in less than the time it would take to drink a cup of tea after he closed his eyes. How could Lu Yi bear this? Again. After another cup of tea's time, Lu Yi opened his eyes again. Again. After repeating this process more than 10 times, Lu Ye's face was faintly pale. Even if his soul was strong, and dying once or twice in the Mirage Realm did not have any special effect on him, but too many times in a short period of time, even he was a little overwhelmed. At this moment, he only felt a splitting headache, as if his whole head was about to explode. He had only experienced this feeling a few times when he first obtained the breath fruit core, and since his soul became stronger, he had not experienced it again. However, dying more than 10 times in a row was not without gain. Under the premise of closing his eyes, he was able to persist longer and longer under the enemy's attack, and even accurately blocked the enemy's attack several times. Xia Liang said that to cultivate this heart's eye secret technique, one needed to experience it personally, using the body to remember the feelings of danger, so every time the enemy attacked in the Mirage Realm, Lu Yi would use his heart to perceive the enemy's attack and feel the danger in his body. Xia Liang was under the care of his elders, fighting a different number of monster beasts, and slowly cultivating this secret technique. Compared with his cultivation method, Lu Yi undoubtedly had more advantages, because in the Mirage Realm, even if he was killed, there would not be too much loss, so the experience of using the body to remember was undoubtedly more unforgettable. Moreover, Lu Ye's mind was much stronger than cultivators of the same level, which was also one of his advantages. He did not know how long it took Xia Liang to cultivate this secret technique, but he was sure that he cultivated it much faster than him. Chapter 583. Inside the Mirage Realm, Lu Ye's eyes were closed as the enemy wrapped in fog moved around him. However, no matter how the enemy attacked, Lu Ye's saber would accurately block them. This battle had lasted for a full incense stick's worth of time. If Lu Yi wanted to, as long as his heart force and spirit force were not exhausted, he could continue like this. After cultivating in the Mirage Realm for half a month, his heart's eye secret technique had finally reached a minor accomplishment. He entered the Mirage Realm a dozen times a day to cultivate, spending 1,000 or 2,000 merit points. In this half a month, He had spent more than 20,000 merit points in the Mirage realm. The price he paid was not small, but the harvest was also great. If Xia Liang knew that Lu Yi had cultivated the heart's eye to this level in just half a month, his jaw would drop. Back then, he had spent an entire half a year before barely reaching the threshold. But now, Lu Yi had not only reached the threshold of the heart's eye secret technique, but the range of his defense was also twice as large, a foot wide. He would be able to clearly sense any danger that came within a foot of him and counterattack accordingly. The unforgettable memories brought about by his repeated deaths were one reason, and the other was due to the strength of Lu Ye's soul. In the fierce battle, Lu Yi, who had been standing motionless, suddenly took a step forward and slashed down with his saber. This saber erupted with an extremely powerful aura, directly splitting the fog-wrapped enemy in two. A single enemy could no longer pose any threat to Lu Yi, so it was time to increase the difficulty of his cultivation. After waiting for a moment, the surrounding fog tumbled and two figures attacked from the left and right. Although there was only one more enemy, the difficulty had more than doubled. After a short while, Lu Yi was killed out of the Mirage realm. There was a slight tingling sensation in his mind, but it quickly disappeared without a trace. He was about to enter the Mirage realm again when he suddenly said, "Lu Yi, there are people waiting for you outside." Lu Yi frowned and walked to the window to look down. He found Zhou Yuntian and Xie Yunhan. When he cultivated in the Mirage realm, he opened the array formation of the pavilion every time, so Zhou Yuntian and Xie Yunhan just waited below and did not disturb him. He didn't know why the two of them had come together. Sensing Lu Ye's gaze, Zhou Yuntian looked up and cheerfully said, "Fellow Taoist Lu." Lu Yi said, "I was cultivating just now. Sorry to have kept you waiting. Please come in." With that said, he turned off the array formation. A short while later, Zhou Yuntian and Xie Yunhan entered together. As the host and guests sat down, Lu Yi served them tea before asking, "Is there something you need from me?" Zhou Yuntian didn't say anything. He simply took out a storage pouch and pushed it in front of Lu Yi. Lu Yi was suspicious. He picked up the storage pouch and inspected it. He found that there were many materials inside. Moreover, they were all materials used to refine array flags. His heart sank and he suddenly had a bad feeling. "Sure enough," Zhou Yuntian said, "His Honor has ordered the two of you to make more formation flags in case of an emergency." Refining more array flags was obviously to be used to set up arrays. The number of materials in the storage bag was huge. If all of them were to be refined into array flags, at least a few hundred array flags could be refined. By then, the number of arrays that could be set up would definitely be large. Combined with the information he had before, Lu Yi knew that the fox demon was about to make a move. Although he had guessed in his heart, Lu Yi still asked, "Fellow Taoist Zhou, why does His Honor suddenly want to refine so many array flags?" Zhou Yuntan hesitated for a moment, then sighed slightly and said, "Let fellow Taoist Xie explain it to you. I still have things to do. I'll leave this place to the two of you. The two of you must be ready in 10 days at the latest." It was unknown if he really had things to do or if it wasn't good to tell Lu Yi these things. After Zhou Yuntian left, Lu Yi looked at Xie Yunhan. The latter smiled bitterly and said, "Brother, although you haven't been in Fox Immortal Valley for long, have you never thought about why His Honor wants to gather so many people in Fox Immortal Valley?" Lu Yi nodded. "Naturally, I have thought about it. However, His Honor must have her reasons for doing things." Xie Yunhan sighed and said, "Actually, His Honor wants to gather so many people mainly for revenge." "Revenge?" "That's right." Xie Yunhan nodded. "Although I don't know what kind of enmity His Honor has with that person, I can be sure that it is an unforgettable hatred that cannot be resolved. Moreover, our Fox Immortal Valley has already carried out this kind of revenge action more than once." Lu Yi had a surprised expression. "There are so many talents in the valley, what kind of enemy can't be killed?" Xie Yunhan's eyes flashed with a trace of reminiscence, his body trembled slightly, then he stared at Lu Yi and said word by word, "An overlord-level monster beast." Lu Yi showed a shocked expression and cried out, "An overlord-level monster beast? Could it be that berserk giant ape?" Although he had already guessed it, guesses were only guesses. Xie Yunhan's words undoubtedly confirmed Lu Ye's previous guess. The target of that fox demon's revenge was indeed that berserk giant ape. Xie Yunhan wasn't surprised that Lu Yi knew about the existence of the berserk giant ape. After all, it was marked on the map. He nodded with a dignified expression. It is that beast. Finding an overlord-level monster beast for revenge, his honor naturally has her reasons for doing this. As subordinates, the only thing we can do is to follow his honor's orders. However, fellow Taoist Lu, you don't have to worry. The two of us are formation cultivators, so we don't need to fight against that berserk giant ape. We only need to help everyone with the formation, so there is still some guarantee of safety. Lu Yi finally understood why Xie Yunhan could live for 12 years in Fox Immortal Valley. Although Fox Immortal Valley could gather quite a number of cultivators, from the beginning to the end, the number of formation cultivators was extremely scarce. Every time they took action against the giant berserk ape, Xie Yunhan would only activate the formation that he had set up in advance to help. He did not need to fight the giant berserk ape head-on. Therefore, even if his revenge failed, Xie Yunhan could still survive. As for the others, they were not so lucky. Every time they took action, a large number of cultivators died. Is it very dangerous? Lu Yi asked seriously. Xie Yunhan laughed bitterly. In the 12 years I have been in Fox Immortal Valley, I have seen this kind of operation 6 times. Almost every time, more than 80% of the people in the valley would be lost. In the entire Fox Immortal Valley, other than me, fellow Taoist Zhou has lived the longest. He came 6 years ago. You have never seen the might of that berserk giant ape, so you don't know how powerful an overlord-level monster beast is. If you really see it, you will understand how dangerous it is to fight against it. Lu Yi frowned and said, since that beast's strength is so great, why doesn't his honor accumulate enough strength in one go and take revenge on it? Instead, we lose the people in the valley time and time again. His honor naturally has the same thought, but this place is located in the depths of Great Mang Mountains. Usually, very few cultivators set foot here. Gathering people is not as easy as you think. Last time, after fellow Taoist Zhou brought you all back, there hasn't been a single newcomer. So, to accumulate enough strength is easier said than done. Then this time, in Brother Xie's opinion, do we have a chance of success? Xie Yunhan said, this time, the number and strength of the people in the valley are much stronger than before. Moreover, there is Brother Lu, a formation cultivator, so I feel that the chances are very high. However, we can't lower our guard. What we need to do now is to refine as many formation flags as possible and set up more formations. With the power of the formations, we can weaken that beast's strength. Only then will his honor have the possibility of taking revenge. Lu Yi said, it seems that we have a long way to go. Xie Yunhan laughed. So, brother should understand why his honor values you so much, right? To be honest, to deal with that kind of enemy, the strength that we formation cultivators can display is what his honor relies on the most. I understand. Lu Yi nodded and said in a deep voice, I will not disappoint his honor. Then hurry up and refine the formation flags. As if because the operation was about to begin, the atmosphere in the entire Fox Immortal Valley became somber. Many cultivators did not know the specific details of the operation. They only knew that there would be a fierce battle in a few days. Under the orders of the Fox Demon, a large number of cultivation resources were distributed. Everyone was cultivating intensely, trying their best to increase their strength. Lu Yi and Xie Yunhan spent every day either recovering their spiritual power or refining formation flags. A large number of resources were consumed, and formation flags were freshly produced. After 6 days, all the materials were used up, and the number of formation flags refined had reached more than 500. With so many formation flags, it was enough to set up hundreds of formations. If they could not do anything to the giant berserk ape with the help of so many formations, then the cultivators of Fox Immortal Valley could only stretch out their necks and be stabbed. When that time came, who knew how many would die? The Fox Immortal Valley was intensely preparing for revenge. At the same time, Feng Yuechan and Giant Armor, who had received Lu Ye's message, led the wolf pack out of the spiritual land and rushed in the direction of Fox Immortal Valley. Feng Yuechan and giant armor alone might not have the ability to go too deep into Mount Taimang, but it was different with a wolf pack. Even if they encountered any powerful demonic beast, the wolf pack could deal with it. Now, the size of the wolf pack had expanded to more than 300. Aside from a few dozen wolf cubs that had not yet grown up, the rest were all demonic wolves with strength comparable to the Cloud River tier. Regardless of whether the fox demon's operation against the giant berserk ape was successful or not, after this battle, Fox Immortal Valley's strength would definitely be greatly reduced. This was also the golden opportunity that Lu Yi had been waiting for a long time. If the fox demon died in the battle against the giant berserk ape, that would naturally be the best. At that time, everyone's divine sense secret technique would be removed. If it did not die, then the wolf pack would attack Fox Immortal Valley and kill the fox demon. There was no overly complicated plan, but often, the simpler the plan, the higher the possibility of success. Now, the only problem that Lu Yi had to consider was Li Baxian's safety. He and Li Baxian had the lowest cultivation in Fox Immortal Valley, but as a formation cultivator, he did not need to fight the giant berserk ape head-on. However, Li Baxian was different. No matter how strong his foundation was in the Spirit Stream tier, against a Cloud River tier overlord, the effect that Li Baxian could play was extremely limited. Chapter 584. In Li Baxian's residence, Lu Yi and Li Baxian were drinking by candlelight. As Lu Yi explained, Li Baxian slowly understood the plans of Fox Immortal Valley. So it's to kill that overlord monster beast. Li Baxian showed a look of understanding. No wonder I always felt that the atmosphere in the valley was a bit strange recently. Fellow Taoist, you also seem to have a lot on her mind. The fellow Taoist he mentioned was Yu Daiwei, who had often come to Li Baxian to spar with him recently. It could be seen that Yu Daiwei had a good impression of Li Baxian, but his fourth senior brother didn't seem to have much interest in her. He simply regarded her as a like-minded fellow Taoist. Little junior brother, this is a confidential matter. Before senior announces it, you must not discuss it with others in private, Li Baxian reminded Lu Yi again. Lu Yi said, I understand. I will only tell senior brother. When the operation begins, senior brother must be careful. Li Baxian nodded, I will pay attention. Does junior brother know when the operation will begin? It should be in the next few days. Lu Yi looked dignified. I have already received the news. I will go out tomorrow to arrange the spirit array. When the spirit array is ready, the operation may begin. Then junior brother must also be careful. An overlord monster beast. I really didn't expect to fight it one day. He didn't seem nervous at all, instead looking forward to it. Early the next morning, Lu Yi pushed open the door of his residence and walked straight to the entrance of Fox Immortal Valley. In the distance, he saw more than a dozen figures waiting there, led by Zhou Yuntian. Lu Yi stepped forward and greeted everyone. Zhou Yuntian nodded, let's go. Saying so, he led the way, with everyone following closely behind. Among the dozen or so people, besides Zhou Yuntian and Xie Yunhan, the rest of them weren't weak, all of them above the 7th order. They were mainly responsible for the safety of Lu Yi and Xie Yunhan. After all, in terms of cultivation, Lu Yi was just a 4th order and Xie Yunhan was just a 7th order, so they really weren't that high. If they really encountered a powerful monster beast, they might not be able to resist. Whether or not these two array cultivators could arrange a powerful enough spirit array was the key to this operation. While they were arranging this spirit array, Zhou Yuntian and the others had to stand guard nearby. Along the way, demonic beasts would appear from time to time. No matter how careful everyone was, they couldn't avoid some fights. However, with only a dozen or so people, and several of them were 9th order cultivators, Yang Kai's group managed to travel through this place without any mishaps. One day later, Zhou Yuntian, who was leading the way, stopped. He took out a map and compared it to their current location. This is the place. Fellow Taoist Lu, fellow Taoist Xie, the two of you must use this location as the center of the formation as quickly as possible. As for how to set up the formation and what kind of formation to set up, the two of you can discuss among yourselves. Everyone else, split up into groups of 2 and keep an eye on the surroundings. Yes. Everyone replied and dispersed. Only Lu Yi, Xie Yunhan, and Zhou Yuntian remained. Xie Yunhan looked at Lu Yi anxiously. In terms of attainments in Formation Dao, he was inferior to Lu Yi, so this time, Lu Yi was in charge of setting up the formation, and he was assisting. Lu Yi didn't immediately start working on the formation. Instead, he looked at Zhou Yuntian and said, "Fellow Taoist Zhou, I have a question." "What is it?" Lu Yi asked. "How far is the giant berserk ape from here?" "Its location isn't fixed, but generally speaking, it only moves around its territory. This place is about 50 miles away from its territory. In other words, Senior wants to lure the giant berserk ape out of its territory and kill it here." "That's right. Since the giant berserk ape is an overlord-level monster beast, its intelligence shouldn't be too low. How can we guarantee that we can lure it here? The cultivators in the valley have already fought with it more than once. Won't it be vigilant?" If fellow Taoist Lu is worried about this, then there's no need. It's true that the beast's intelligence is high, and it can understand humans, but it's still an overlord-level monster beast. In this Cloud River battlefield, it's the leader, so even if it notices something, it won't care too much. We did the same thing the last 2 times. Although there were some twists and turns in the process, we were able to lure it to the predetermined location each time. Lu Yi nodded. Then there's no problem. He secretly guessed that if that was the case, the giant berserk ape's intelligence wouldn't be that high. He suddenly thought of the overlord-level monster beast he encountered in the Spirit Stream battlefield. It had already transformed into a human form, but it was still easy to deceive. It seemed that this was an unavoidable disadvantage of monster beasts. After resolving the doubts in his heart, Lu Yi flew into the air and observed the terrain below. After a while, he had a specific plan in his heart. Many of the spiritual inscriptions he had mastered were suitable for setting up formations. However, if it was used to deal with an overlord-level monster beast, there were some auxiliary formations that weren't very useful. If he wanted to successfully kill the opponent, he still had to use killing formations. Of all the killing arrays he could set up, the most powerful one was undoubtedly the explosion array. A single explosion array wouldn't pose much of a threat to an overlord-class demonic beast, but if he set up enough explosion arrays, they could still be of great use. There were also spiritual inscriptions such as lightning attraction, scorching flame, and earth formation. If they were set up individually, they could be used as spells. However, if they were used as the core to set up formations, then they would be lightning attraction formation, scorching flame formation, and earth formation. Together with the explosion formation, they could also be used to great effect. Immediately, Lu Yi and Xie Yunhan set up the formations together. Formation flags were consumed one by one, and formations were formed one after another. In order to increase the power of the formations, Lu Yi even placed spirit stones in many of the formations to let the formations operate in advance and accumulate energy. Considering that the cultivators in the valley needed to fight with the giant berserk ape, most of the formations set up this time needed to be controlled by people. There were very few formations that could be triggered. For a full 3 days, Lu Yi and Xie Yunhan almost didn't rest. They set up hundreds of formations in a radius of 10 miles, making the area dangerous. Lu Yi could be said to have done everything he could to set up these formations. He didn't hold back at all. Although it would be beneficial for him if the strength of the Fox Immortal Valley was weakened, and he even planned to let the wolf pack kill the fox demons after this battle, the premise was that they could win the battle with the giant berserk ape. If they lost even this battle, then his and Li Baxian's safety couldn't be guaranteed. Thus, no matter what, Lu Yi didn't dare to do anything while setting up the formations. He didn't have a clear understanding of how strong a Cloud River tier overlord-level demonic beast was, but just from the current situation of the Fox Immortal Valley, the strength of the giant berserk ape would only exceed his expectations. And on the second day after all the formations were set up, the fox demon led the cultivators of the Fox Immortal Valley over. Everyone in the Fox Immortal Valley was mobilized, and no one was left behind. More than 80 cultivators gathered together, and Zhou Yuntian went forward to report the situation here. After hearing the report, The fox demon looked at Lu Yi and Xie Yunhan with praise. You two have worked hard. If we succeed this time, you two will take the first credit. Lu Yi and Xie Yunhan both had happy and excited expressions. They repeatedly said that it was their duty to serve their lord. Such a humble performance undoubtedly made the fox demon very satisfied. My lord, Lu Yi continued, before we move out, I'd like you to familiarize yourselves with the surrounding spell formations. That way, you'll know where to protect yourselves and where to stop the enemy. Perhaps you'll be able to reduce the number of casualties. The fox demon nodded. You're very considerate. Since that's the case, we'll do as you say. Fellow Taoists, please follow me. As Lu Yi spoke, he rose into the air and flew toward the area covered by the formations. A large group of cultivators followed behind him. This place is a trap formation. Later, if any of you can't shake off the enemy, you can come here to save your life. Lu Yi pointed at a certain place below and said. Everyone silently noted it down. This area is filled with explosive formations, and it's under the control of fellow Xie and me. You can't stop here, especially if you're being chased by the enemy. Fellow Xie and I will activate the formations at the appropriate time to help everyone kill the enemy. This place is a lightning formation. This place is a hallucinatory formation. As Lu Yi continued to explain, the formations of the entire area appeared in the cultivators' minds one by one. The cultivators' memories were all very strong. Combined with what they saw in front of them, they could quickly outline the layout of the formations in their minds. Zhou Yuntian's eyes lit up as he listened. He had participated in 2 operations against the berserk giant ape. In the past, the formations were set up by Xie Yunhan, but how could Xie Yunhan's formations have so many tricks up their sleeves? They couldn't provide much help to the Fox Immortal Valley either. However, although the formations set up by Lu Yi weren't very exquisite, at least they had a lot of tricks up their sleeves. This gave him some confidence in this operation. Moreover, Lu Yi had them familiarize themselves with the formations before the operation. Clearly, he was thinking for them. When the time came, they might really need to rely on the formations to save their lives. 2 hours later, everyone returned. Zhou Yuntian stepped forward and cupped his fists. My lord, we're ready. The fox demon's charming eyes flashed with cold killing intent. Let's move. This time, no matter the price, we must kill it. We definitely won't disappoint my lord. The cultivators promised, their battle intent surging. Lu Yi sighed in his heart. This time, no matter if they succeeded or not, these cultivators would definitely suffer heavy casualties. Their minds were controlled by the fox demon. To them, the fox demon's orders were a mission that they couldn't disobey. Even if the fox demon ordered them to die, they wouldn't frown. More than 10 figures walked out from the crowd. Under Zhou Yuntian's lead, they flew into the sky and headed in a direction. It was obvious that they were going to lure the snake out of its hole. This area was considered the border of the Overlord-level demonic beasts' territory. Therefore, there were no traces of other demonic beasts. Flying like this wouldn't cause them to worry about being attacked by demonic beasts. The rest of the people were waiting quietly. Time continued to pass. Until a certain moment, Yu Daiwei, who had been guarding the fox demon, checked the battlefield imprint's message and said, My lord, fellow Taoist Zhou and the others have lured it out. Chapter 585. Very good. Fox Demon's expression changed as she shouted, Prepare to attack. With that order, the cultivators of Fox Immortal Valley silently circulated their spirit chi and prepared for battle. Roar. A roar suddenly came from the depths of the mountains, startling countless birds. The roar came from at least 20 to 30 kilometers away, but it still gave people a great sense of oppression. This was the might of an overlord-level monster beast. After a while, a few streaks of light appeared in front of everyone's eyes. It was Zhou Yuntian and the others who had left earlier. More than 10 of them went, but only 7 returned. The rest were nowhere to be seen. It was easy to imagine what happened to them. There was a tall figure chasing after them like a maggot. That figure couldn't fly and could only jump up and down on the ground. However, its speed was so fast that it wasn't any slower than Zhou Yuntian and the others. Every time it landed, it would cause the earth to shake and the mountains to shake. The people who were being chased had panicked looks on their faces. Each of them used all their strength to increase their speed to the limit, but they still couldn't shake off the pursuer. Lu Yi looked over and found that the black figure was a giant ape covered in red fur. It was the Overlord-level monster beast marked on the map, the giant berserk ape. It was unknown what Zhou Yuntian and the others had done to it, but the giant berserk ape's eyes were filled with malevolence. Its cold, murderous intent seemed to have materialized, causing the cultivators in front to feel as if they had fallen into an eternal ice cave. The giant berserk ape jumped up high again and suddenly reached out with its hand, grabbing a cultivator at the back of the group. Although Lu Yi wasn't familiar with that cultivator, he had seen him a few times in Fox Immortal Valley and knew that he was an 8th Order cultivator. But at this moment, this 8th Order Cloud River Realm cultivator, who could be considered a powerhouse in the entire Cloud River battlefield, was being held in the palm of the giant berserk ape like a little chick. Help! That person's eyes were filled with fear as he raised his hand to call for help. As soon as his voice fell, the giant berserk ape's hand tightened and with a bang, his entire body exploded into a rain of blood, not even leaving behind a corpse. This scene was imprinted into the eyes of all the cultivators waiting here, and it caused their eyelids to twitch while their hearts were filled with astonishment. Before today's operation, the fox demon had already informed them of the operation's objectives. However, even though they were all mentally prepared to sacrifice their lives for the fox demon, they still felt a chill from the bottom of their hearts when they saw this scene. An uncontrollable fear spread through their bodies. Many cultivators instinctively retreated, wondering in their hearts. Could they really kill such a terrifying existence? An 8th Order Cloud River Realm cultivator had been crushed to death with a single slap. Such a visual impact caused all of their original complacency to melt like snowflakes under the scorching sun. No one would feel safe against such a person. What are you afraid of? Today either it dies or you die. No one is allowed to retreat. The fox demon opened her plump red lips and spat out her bone-chilling words. As soon as she spoke, the cultivators stopped retreating. The fear on their faces slowly disappeared and was replaced by a look of determination. The soul mystic technique planted by the fox demon had taken effect. To the cultivators of Fox Immortal Valley, the fox demon's words were irresistible orders. Someone roared, "For Senior, we must kill this bastard today." The crowd was roused, "We must kill this bastard." For a moment, their fighting spirit soared. The distance of 20 kilometers was covered in a flash. Zhou Yuntian and the others had fled back in a sorry state. They had finally survived, and behind them was the giant berserk ape. Attack! Following the fox demon's order, the scattered cultivators attacked together. For a moment, the spiritual energy in the area became chaotic. The might of many imperial artifacts and techniques covered the sky as they surged towards the giant berserk ape. In an instant, the area around it turned into a whirlpool of death. When the cultivators of Fox Immortal Valley attacked, the giant berserk ape had just leapt into the air. Following the explosion of many imperial artifacts and techniques, the giant ape's huge body was directly blasted down and heavily smashed into the ground. The ground cracked and dust flew. Roar! The giant ape stood up in a sorry state and roared. Visible waves of air swept forward, and the trees near it were uprooted as if they were hit by a tornado. However, it was met with even more attacks from imperial equipment and spells. Multicolored light blossomed, rendering the entire area gorgeous and colorful. Thud, 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 thud. That was the sound of the attacks hitting the giant raging ape. The giant ape, which was 30 feet tall, was actually forced to stagger back under such continuous attacks. Its body was swaying uncontrollably. Even if they lost a few people, there were still about 80 cultivators on Fox Immortal Valley's side. With such a force gathered together, how terrifying was it? For a moment, they actually suppressed the giant berserk ape's power. Seeing this scene, the cultivators of Fox Immortal Valley were overjoyed. Many of them suddenly realized that this overlord-level demonic beast didn't seem to be much. It wasn't as terrifying as they imagined, so they attacked even more fiercely. Among all the cultivators, only Lu Yi and Xie Yunhan didn't participate in the siege of the giant berserk ape. The two of them were responsible for presiding over the formation that was set up in advance, so they flew in the air on their spirit artifacts. Looking at the huge figure that was constantly retreating, wrapped in the light of imperial artifacts and techniques, Lu Yi looked at the fox demon standing in the crowd. There was no joy on the fox demon's face. Instead, her expression was solemn. This made Lu Ye's heart sink. The situation wasn't as optimistic as it seemed. In the entire Fox Immortal Valley, the fox demon was the one who understood the strength of the giant berserk ape the best. Her expression was undoubtedly telling. However, under such a situation, Lu Yi couldn't think of any way that the giant berserk ape could turn the situation around. With more than 80 cultivators attacking together, even if it was an overlord-level demonic beast, what could it do? Just as he was thinking about this, another earth-shaking roar came from the giant berserk ape. It seemed that because it was attacked, the overlord-level demonic beast was completely enraged. This roar was even stronger than before. When the air wave swept out, Lu Yi, who was flying on his artifact, couldn't help but sway. Looking forward, Lu Ye's eyelids twitched. In the center of the multicolored light and chaotic spiritual energy, a dazzling red light suddenly expanded like a sun. A terrifying demonic essence swept out in all directions. In the cultivators' camp, cries of alarm sounded. At this moment, the connection between themselves and their imperial artifacts was severed. A series of clanging sounds rang out. Imperial artifacts of different shapes fell beside the giant berserk ape. Looking at the luster of those imperial artifacts, it was obvious that they had lost their spirituality. This was caused by the impact of the overlord-level demonic beast's demonic essence. In the next moment, the giant berserk ape, which was originally suppressed, suddenly leaped high and broke through the heavy blockade. Its tall and burly figure carried an indescribable sense of oppression as it landed at the densest part of the crowd. At this moment, Lu Ye's pupils shrank. Without the interference of the many artifacts and spells, the giant raging ape's current state was clear at a glance. What shocked Lu Yi was that after enduring the indiscriminate bombardment of so many cultivators for more than 10 breaths, the giant raging ape was actually not injured at all. Even the red fur on its body was not damaged in the slightest. A dense and solid demonic essence wrapped around the surface of its body, forming an impenetrable defense that was as solid as gold. Lu Yi finally understood why the fox demon's expression was so serious. The overlord-level demonic beast's strength was actually stronger than he expected. In that situation, even a cultivator who had just advanced to the true lake stage wouldn't be unscathed. However, the giant berserk ape wasn't injured at all. Lu Yi still didn't know how strong it was, but this kind of defense was undoubtedly much more terrifying than some early-stage true lake stage cultivators. Without breaking the demonic essence on its body, there was no way to injure it. If he didn't even have the ability to injure it, how could he kill it? Lu Yi secretly rejoiced. Fortunately, he didn't tamper with the array and used all his strength. Otherwise, he might really be in trouble this time. Amidst the cries of alarm, the giant berserk ape landed. The ground trembled. With the ape at the center, cracks spread out like a spider web. Some cultivators who reacted quickly had already escaped. However, there were still a few cultivators who didn't react quickly enough. They only thought of running when the giant berserk ape landed in front of them. However, it was already too late. The giant berserk ape reached out and grabbed the cultivator closest to it. Amidst the cultivator's terrified cries of despair, the giant berserk ape smashed him to the ground. The cries of despair stopped abruptly. There were traces of blood and flesh on the ground. The giant berserk ape sprinted a few more steps and caught up with another cultivator. Its huge hand covered the sky and slapped down. That cultivator didn't even have the chance to make a sound before he was smashed into meat paste. It turned around and let out a short roar. With an agility that no one could understand, it scooped up a third cultivator. Then, it opened its bloody mouth and bit down. Blood splattered. The upper half of the cultivator's body disappeared. The giant berserk ape didn't chase after the fleeing cultivators. It opened its mouth and spat out the upper half of the cultivator's body. The corner of its mouth was stained with blood. It raised its head and puffed out its chest. Then, it raised its hands and slapped its chest. Pung pung pung, the dull sound was like a war hammer hitting a war drum. It was so loud that it made people's eardrums tremble. Accompanied by the slapping sound, it let out a furious roar, displaying the might of an overlord-level demonic beast. In mid-air, Lu Yi waved the array flag in his hand. The giant berserk ape vaguely sensed it. However, before it could react, violent spiritual energy suddenly surged around it. Then, a dazzling flame shot up into the sky, turning a large area into a purgatory. A roar sounded and spread in all directions. The flame wrapped around the giant berserk ape's body. Explosion array! However, in the next moment, the giant berserk ape's burly body rushed out of the flame. Demonic chi rolled all over its body, but it still wasn't injured at all. This was an explosion array that Lu Yi had placed with spirit stones to allow the spirit array to operate in advance, so the power it could display was at least 50% stronger than normal explosion arrays, but even so, it was still difficult to shake the protective monster chi of an overlord-grade monster beast. Kill it! The demon fox roared. The panicked cultivators woke up from their daze and attacked the giant berserk ape again. Chapter 586. Boom, boom. Loud explosions continued to be heard, accompanied by a riot of spiritual energy. Explosion arrays were activated, and the giant raging ape was blasted until it was dizzy. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the cultivators attacked again. Many weapons and spells attacked the giant ape from all directions. In the air, Lu Yi and Xie Yunhan waved the formation flags in their hands from time to activate the power of the formation. However, there was no joy on their faces. Because until now, the giant berserk ape's protective demonic chi did not show any signs of being shaken. Without breaking its protective demonic chi, it was impossible to hurt it at all. Boom, boom. A thunderbolt struck down from the sky and hit the top of the giant berserk ape's head. It was Lu Yi activating a thunder summoning formation that he had set up earlier. The thunder snake swam around the surface of the giant ape's body and was annihilated. It had no effect on it at all. The cultivator's attacks and the explosion of the formation had undoubtedly infuriated the giant berserk ape. It roared and rampaged across a large area. Everywhere it went, it set off a bloody storm. Screams could be heard from time to time. In just the time it took to brew a cup of tea, more than 10 people had been killed. None of the cultivators targeted by the giant berserk ape were spared. The smell of blood filled the air and the ground was covered with traces of blood and flesh. Under normal circumstances, the cultivators' most correct response in the face of such a situation would undoubtedly be to scatter and run as far as they could. However, the cultivators of Fox Immortal Valley were all planted with the sole secret technique by the Fox Demon. Therefore, even if the losses were huge, no one ran away under the Fox Demon's orders. Everyone was desperately urging their spiritual chi to attack the giant berserk ape. This was a battle that did not allow for the slightest retreat. It was also a battle where one had to fight to survive. The giant berserk ape's figure constantly rose and fell on the battlefield. Its attack method was simple and crude to the extreme. It was nothing more than a grab, a slap, and a pinch. However, it was such a simple and crude attack that made it difficult for the cultivators of Fox Immortal Valley to deal with. The trapping formation and hallucinatory formation that Lu Yi had set up before played a big role. Some of the cultivators who were targeted by the trapping formation and hallucinatory formation remembered his instructions and hurriedly rushed towards the trapping formation and hallucinatory formation. As the formation operated, the giant berserk apes were trapped in it, allowing the cultivators to barely escape. But even with Lu Yi and Xie Yunhan presiding over the battle formation, they could only trap the giant berserk ape for 2 or 3 breaths of time at most. This Overlord-class demonic beast really let Lu Yi experience what it meant to defeat 10 with one's strength. Regardless of whether it was a trapping formation or an illusory formation, it could easily break through them. As time passed, the number of casualties continued to increase. Standing at the edge of the battlefield and watching the situation, the fox demon's expression was as cold as ice. She didn't care about the deaths of the cultivators. Her pair of beautiful, abyss-like eyes reflected the burly figure of the giant berserk ape. Deep within her beautiful eyes, there was an unforgettable resentment and hatred. Back then, she was just an ordinary fox demon who followed her master into the Taimong Mountains to train and cultivate. However, she accidentally entered the territory of the berserk giant ape. She could only watch as her master was slapped into meat paste by that tall figure. From that day onwards, there was only hatred left in her heart. As if blessed by the heavens, and also as if the seed of hatred had sprouted in her heart, her bloodline suddenly began to awaken, and she possessed abilities that shouldn't be possessed at the level of Cloud River tier, allowing her plan of revenge to have a trace of success. These years, relying on her own unique abilities, she continuously recruited cultivators who entered the depths of the Taimong Mountains, increasing the strength of her subordinates. Time after time, she came to find the giant berserk ape for revenge, but returned in disappointment every time. This time, the strength of her subordinates was the strongest, and there was an additional formation cultivator who had extremely high attainments in the Tao of formations, so it was also the time with the greatest hope. If she missed this opportunity, she was afraid that there wouldn't be a next time. Xie Yunhan told Lu Yi that the fox demon also wanted to accumulate enough strength to find the giant berserk ape for revenge, but because it wasn't easy to recruit new people, the strength of the Fox Immortal Valley was ultimately unable to increase. But in fact, that wasn't the case. The fox demon did indeed have the ability to control people's minds, but this ability also had a limit. Over 80 cultivators in the Fox Immortal Valley was practically her limit, and she already had no way of enslaving more cultivators. So it wasn't that she didn't want to accumulate enough strength, but that there was no other way. Moreover, every time she enslaved an additional cultivator, the invisible sense of danger in her heart would increase a little. After so many years, that sense of danger had almost condensed into a solid form. She was clear in her heart that this was the attention of Tianji, because she possessed power that shouldn't belong to the level of Cloud River tier, and was even using it to enslave human cultivators. To Tianji, who had always been fair and just, this was intolerable. Once that sense of danger accumulated to a certain extent, she would definitely receive punishment from Tianji. And this was her last chance, and if she still couldn't succeed this time, she wouldn't have another chance. So no matter what, she couldn't fail. What made her feel at ease was that the newly arrived formation cultivators' attainments in the Tao of formations were indeed impressive. One formation after another exploded, continuously weakening the power of the giant berserk ape, and a great many cultivators in the valley escaped with the help of the formations that he had set up. It could be said that if it weren't for the formations that Lu Yi had set up, the side of the Fox Immortal Valley would have long been defeated. Hong, hong, hong. Loud sounds rang out one after another, and Lu Ye's expression was grave. He and Xie Yunhan had spent 3 days and set up over 100 formations in this area, but this battle had only started for a stick of incense, and half of all the formations had already been used up. Looking at the giant berserk ape, it was still completely unharmed, and its protective demonic essence was solid. On the other hand, the side of the Fox Immortal Valley had lost more than 20 people, and although the remaining people didn't retreat and were still attacking with all their might, the results were minimal. This battle, could they really win? A trace of doubt involuntarily appeared in Lu Ye's heart. At least until now, he hadn't seen the slightest hope of victory. Taking a break from the busy battle, he glanced at the fox demon. There was only one person by the fox demon's side, and that was Li Baxian. Lu Yi didn't know why the fox demon had brought Li Baxian with her. Presumably, when Zhou Yuntian had introduced Li Baxian, he had been extremely respectful, causing the fox demon to value Li Baxian even more. If this operation failed, Li Baxian would undoubtedly become the fox demon's most anticipated chess piece. It was probably because of this reason that the fox demon had allowed Li Baxian to stay by her side and not participate in the battle. However, this was something Lu Yi was happy to see. His fourth senior brother was only a fifth-order cultivator. Although his foundation was strong and his strength wasn't inferior to an average 7th order cultivator, in such a battlefield, not to mention a 7th order, even an 8th order or 9th order cultivator could die at any time. Of the 15 9th order cultivators in the valley, 3 had already died, and one of them was a body cultivator known for his powerful physique. Lu Yi saw with his own eyes that the body cultivator burst like a bubble in front of the giant berserk ape's palm. In the face of absolute strength, whether it was a body cultivator or an artifact cultivator, there was no difference. The number of spirit arrays continued to decrease, and the casualties of the cultivators in the valley continued to increase, but under the fox demon's orders, none of the cultivators slowed down their attacks on the giant berserk ape. The continuous attacks had not stopped since the beginning of the battle, bombarding the giant berserk ape's body. Another cultivator screamed as his body was crushed by the giant berserk ape. The remaining cultivators who were still alive were all covered in dust. The battle had only been going on for half an hour, but only 50 of the 80 cultivators had survived. Only 10 spirit arrays that Lu Yi had arranged remained. Just as Lu Ye's heart was heavy, the giant berserk ape suddenly roared and jumped high into the air, heading straight for the edge of the battlefield. This scene made Lu Ye's eyes light up. In previous battles, the giant berserk ape would also jump around, but it would always jump into the densest areas of the crowd. But this time, it was different. Looking at the giant berserk ape's posture, it seemed that it wanted to leave the battlefield. It was in the middle of showing off its might, yet it was making such a strange move. Lu Yi couldn't help but think, this guy is about to reach its limit. Among the nearly 100 spirit arrays, 80% were killing arrays. 1 or 2 spirit arrays wouldn't pose much of a threat to it, but after a long time, even if it wasn't injured, it would consume a lot of energy. Not to mention, the cultivators in the valley had been constantly besieging it since the beginning. Therefore, even if this overlord-level spirit beast still looked majestic, it was probably an arrow at the end of its flight. If Lu Yi could think of this, how could the fox demon, who had been paying attention to the giant berserk ape, not have? Seeing that the giant berserk ape was about to leave the battlefield, she immediately shouted, "Stop it! Don't let it get away!" Over the years, they had besieged the giant berserk ape again and again, and each time they were defeated. There had never been a situation where the giant berserk ape took the initiative to leave the battlefield. This was the first time. It was also the closest they had ever been to success. Therefore, no matter what, they couldn't let it escape. Otherwise, all their previous efforts would be for naught. Following the fox demon's order, several cultivators fearlessly flew into the air and met the giant berserk ape head-on. Each of them attacked, wanting to knock it down. However, the giant berserk ape only waved its hand, and the cultivator closest to it exploded into a cloud of blood. When the others' attacks landed on the giant berserk ape, they were like ants trying to shake a tree. The fox demon was secretly anxious. At this moment, when the giant berserk ape reached the highest point, Lu Yi suddenly waved an array flag in his hand. On the ground, a series of complex patterns lit up with dazzling light. Then, an invisible pressure fell from the sky. Several cultivators who were flying in the air to stop the giant berserk ape suddenly felt a mountain pressing down on their heads. Each of them cried out strangely and fell from the sky. The giant berserk ape was the same, and its falling speed was even faster than the cultivators. When it fell, a human-like look of confusion appeared on its face. It obviously didn't know what was going on. Forbidden Sky. Back in the spiritual land, Lu Yi activated the Forbidden Sky formation, causing Xia Liang and the others to suffer a loss. Now that they were going to deal with an overlord-level spirit beast, they naturally wouldn't lack a Forbidden Sky formation. Previously, he wasn't sure if the giant berserk ape could fly or not. He had arranged this formation just in case, but he didn't expect it to play a miraculous role at this time. Chapter 587. Boom! The giant ape landed awkwardly, and its huge body smashed into the dust. A scene that surprised everyone appeared. As it landed, the solid body protecting demonic essence on the surface of its body showed a trace of violent vibration. It had to be known that before, whether it was the power of the formation or the attacks of the cultivators, they were unable to shake its protective demonic essence in the slightest. At this moment, it was simply falling from midair, but there was actually such a violent vibration. It was obviously not normal. It was about to reach its limit. All the cultivators who saw this scene had this thought in their hearts. Kill! When a roar came out, more violent and intensive attacks than before covered the place where the giant ape landed. The already turbulent body protecting demonic essence shook even more violently. The giant ape climbed up awkwardly and roared violently. The sound waves swept out, and several cultivators nearby immediately felt a stinging pain in their eardrums. Blood flowed out of their ears, but they did not retreat a step. Instead, they madly urged their spiritual power to attack the giant ape. The giant ape once again leapt into the air. However, under the cover of the forbidden flight array, the higher it was from the ground, the greater the pressure it had to endure. For an overlord-level demonic beast like it, jumping hundreds of meters normally wasn't a problem at all. However, this time, it was only able to jump less than 10 meters before it was powerless to continue. Moreover, under the pressure of the forbidden flight array, it quickly fell back to the ground. It obviously noticed that something was wrong and no longer made useless efforts. Instead, it rushed in a direction. It was obvious that it wanted to break through by force. Don't let it escape. The fox demon shouted angrily. Immediately, more than a dozen cultivators rushed out in a flash, blocking the direction of the giant ape's escape. At the front were a few burly physique cultivators with large shields in their hands. Spells and weapons bombarded wildly, but they still could not stop the giant ape from breaking through. When it came close, the cultivators roared and put up the large shields in front of them. Their blood and chi surged as they forcibly blocked it. The giant ape swept its hand, and the cultivator at the forefront was directly swept away with a muffled groan. He vomited blood in midair and fell unconscious when he landed. Followed by the second cultivator, the third. Wherever the giant ape passed, it was like the autumn wind sweeping away the fallen leaves. No cultivator could face it head-on. Just as the giant ape was about to break out of the encirclement, a fierce flame suddenly erupted, and a deafening explosion sounded. The flame rolled over and over, enveloping the giant ape. The few remaining explosion arrays exploded with their final brilliance. In the next moment, the great ape's burly figure tore through the flames and charged out. However, before it could even take a few steps, another large array formation was activated. A transparent, bowl-like curtain of light instantly enveloped the great ape. The great ape crashed into the curtain of light. The curtain of light rippled, but it didn't break. Instead, the great ape was knocked back several steps. Trapping array. It was originally meant to be used by the cultivators of Immortal Fox Valley to protect their lives. Unexpectedly, it had played an unexpected role at this moment. The giant ape roared angrily, and its huge palm turned into a fist, bombarding the barrier of the trapping array. With just 2 or 3 simple punches, the light barrier shattered. However, this delay of a few breaths allowed the surviving cultivators of Fox Immortal Valley to complete the encirclement. At the same time that the light screen shattered, attacks from all directions arrived as scheduled. Colorful lights drowned the giant ape. A painful roar came from the center of the spiritual energy riot, accompanied by the faint sound of something shattering. After a full 5 breaths, the giant ape finally charged out of the concentrated attacks. However, its current appearance shook the spirits of all the cultivators of Fox Immortal Valley. The demonic chi protection that originally enveloped its body had disappeared without a trace. Its red fur was damaged. Not only that, there were many wounds on its body that were dripping with blood. Good. The fox demon who had been paying attention to this scene revealed a look of joy. Master, did you see that? After so many years of perseverance and waiting, there's finally a result. Today, Xian can avenge you. After breaking the great ape's demonic chi protection, the originally insufferably arrogant lord-level demonic beast was now in a sorry state. Seeing that victory was in sight, the cultivators of Fox Immortal Valley attacked even more fiercely. The great ape roared angrily and raised its arms to block in front of its body. However, it was still unable to block the attacks of the spells and Imperial equipment. The injuries on its body increased. If it was an ordinary demonic beast, without the demonic chi protection, it would have already died under such a concentrated attack. However, an Lord-level demonic beast was still an Lord-level demonic beast. Its physical body was unbelievably strong. Although there were many injuries on its body, they were only superficial. It no longer had the awe-inspiring aura it had when it first arrived. It also sensed that its situation was not good. It should have been invincible in the Cloud River battlefield, but it suddenly smelled the scent of death. This caused its mind to be somewhat flustered. It instinctively charged towards a direction to break out of the encirclement. However, it had only taken a few steps before it was beaten back by the violent attacks of the cultivators there. It changed directions, but it was still the same. Although many cultivators of Fox Immortal Valley had died, there were still about 50 people left. Facing an Lord-level demonic beast that had exhausted its demonic chi, they naturally had the upper hand. If there were no accidents, it would not be long before the giant berserk ape was killed by the cultivators. Killing an Lord-level demonic beast was something that no one dared to think about before. However, at this moment, such a victory was easily obtainable. In such a situation, even without the orders of the Fox Immortal Valley, the cultivators of the valley did not hold back. However, at this moment, the giant berserk ape suddenly roared. When it opened its mouth, a resplendent earthen yellow light burst forth from its mouth. That halo turned into a straight line and charged forward. Wherever it passed, all the techniques and Imperial equipment lost their luster. It destroyed everything in its path. A body cultivator who bore the brunt of the attack was stunned on the spot. Only when the earthen yellow light disappeared from his eyes did he lower his head to look at his chest in a daze. What he saw caused his pupils to shrink. He did not know when, but a bowl-sized hole had appeared in his chest, piercing through his entire body. He only felt his vision turn black as he fell to the ground. As if there was some kind of chain reaction, when the first body cultivator fell, 7 or 8 cultivators behind him all fell to the ground. Each of them had a bowl-sized hole in their bodies, and their lives were slim. Most people did not know what had happened. Lu Yi, who was standing in the air and paying attention to the situation on the battlefield, clearly saw that the earthen yellow light was the color of the demonic core. Just now, the giant berserk ape had directly used its own demonic core. He had heard that demonic beasts could use their demonic cores to attack when in a desperate situation. However, not every demonic beast had such an ability. After all, the demonic core was the crystallization of a demonic beast's strength. Once it left its body, its vitality would be greatly damaged, and if it was serious, it would immediately lose its life. Therefore, even if some demonic beasts had such an ability, they would not dare to use it unless they had no other choice. The giant berserk ape had used its demonic core at this time. It was clearly forced into a desperate situation and was going all out. The result was the death of 7 or 8 cultivators in the direction of the demonic core's attack. This scene caused him to feel a chill all over his body. When fighting against an overlord-level demonic beast, one really could not be careless. It was clearly an arrow at the end of its flight, but it still had such a terrifying method. He was only glad that he was a formation cultivator in Fox Immortal Valley and did not need to participate in this battle. Otherwise, it was very likely that he would be one of the dead cultivators. This was not something that could be avoided with enough caution. The cultivators who could survive were not stronger, but lucky. Originally, the encirclement was impenetrable. No matter which direction the giant berserk ape tried to break through, it would be beaten back by the cultivators. However, with the attack of the demonic core, a gap had appeared in the encirclement. Almost at the same time that the earthen yellow light was annihilated, the giant berserk ape broke out of the encirclement. Midway, it retrieved its demonic core and fled into the distance. The surviving cultivators were clearly shocked by the attack just now. They were unable to stop it for a moment. "What are you still standing there for?" The fox demon shouted. Her face, which should have been an outstanding beauty, was now distorted and sinister. Extremely vicious words came out of her mouth. "If it escapes today, All of you will die." As soon as she said that, the cultivator's expressions changed drastically. Zhou Yuntian, who was covered in blood, raised his arm and shouted, "Chase!" He immediately flew into the air and charged in the direction that the giant berserk ape had escaped. The surviving cultivators followed closely behind. The giant berserk ape had been beaten until its demonic energy was exhausted. It was forced to use its demonic core to attack. At this moment, it could be said that its vitality was greatly damaged. Therefore, even if it ran out of the range of the sky-ceiling formation, its speed was not fast. In just a moment, the cultivators caught up to the giant berserk ape. The battle began again, but this time, the cultivators completely had the upper hand. The fox demon also followed. Things like revenge naturally had to be done personally. Only then would it be more meaningful. Xie Yunhan called out to Lu Yi and flew over as well. Lu Yi was a short distance behind. While no one was paying attention to him, he raised his hand and tapped on the battlefield imprint to send out a message. By the time Lu Yi arrived at the battlefield, the situation was already very clear. Although the giant berserk ape was fighting with all its might, its demonic energy was exhausted. Using its demonic core to attack had greatly damaged its vitality. At this moment, its body was covered in wounds and its strength was not even half of its peak. Although the number of cultivators on the Fox Immortal Valley's side had been reduced by more than half, there were still nearly 40 people. Under the premise that it could not fly, how could the giant berserk ape be a match? As time passed, the giant berserk ape's momentum became weaker and weaker. The wounds on its body also increased. The blood flowing from its body dyed the ground under its feet red. Until a certain moment, when it could no longer hold on, its burly body fell to the ground with a loud bang. It was not dead, but it no longer had the strength to continue fighting. The surviving cultivators surrounded it. There was no cheering or excitement, only deep reverence. The losses in today's battle were too heavy. The fox demon parted the crowd and walked forward with flirtatious steps. The hatred in its eyes was so condensed that it was almost tangible. "Supreme One, be careful," Zhou Yuntian shouted in a low voice. He and a few other cultivators followed closely beside the fox demon. The fox demon flew into the air and stood a few feet above the giant berserk ape. It looked down with a cold expression, but its eyes were filled with satisfaction. "You also have a day like this." Chapter 588. The giant ape lay quietly on the ground, gasping for air with its mouth wide open. The light in its eyes was dim. "Seal its limbs." The fox demon clenched her teeth and ordered. Immediately, many cultivators rushed out with spirit weapons in their hands. They fiercely stabbed the giant ape's limbs, firmly nailing it to the ground. Blood splattered. The giant ape showed a painful expression. It instinctively struggled, but to no avail. It had completely exhausted its strength. The fox demon reached out and grabbed a sword from a cultivator's hand. She floated down and stepped on the giant ape's chest. Her body was half tilted, and her chest was exposed. But at this moment, no cultivator had the courage to admire this rare beauty. "Do you still recognize me?" The fox demon's eyes were filled with pleasure. The words that came out of her mouth were bone-chilling. "I said, 'One day you will die by my hands.' I have waited for this day for 18 years. 18 years. Her face showed an expression that was unsure whether to cry or laugh. 18 years of waiting, failure after failure. The hatred that filled her heart could finally be vented at this moment. She held the sword hilt with both hands and aimed it at the giant ape's chest. She raised it high and gritted her teeth. "Die!" The long sword fiercely stabbed down. A light sound was heard. Blood splattered. The long sword went straight to the hilt. After suffering such a heavy blow, a trace of clarity flashed through the huge ape's gloomy eyes. It let out a furious roar and suddenly raised one of its arms that should have been immobilized on the ground. As the group of cultivators cried out in alarm, it sent a slap towards the fox demon. The fox demon's expression changed. She didn't expect that her enemy still had the strength to fight back in such a state. She also didn't expect that it still had the ability to break free from its restraints. Her reaction was also fast. Almost at the moment the giant ape raised its hand, she floated back. But she was still affected by the giant ape's attack. Her tall and graceful body was like a falling leaf. Supreme One. The group of cultivators turned pale with fright. The fox demon fell to the ground in a sorry state. She spat out a mouthful of blood. Her face suddenly turned pale, and her aura was violently fluctuating. She was only slightly hit by the giant ape's attack, and she was already so heavily injured. If she didn't react fast enough, she would have died. Kill it! The fox demon roared with hatred. The cultivators obeyed. Many attacks fell on the giant ape, but it didn't respond. The slap that hit the fox demon was the last sound of its life. Zhou Yuntian, who was covered in injuries, rushed to the fox demon and asked with concern, "Supreme One, how are your injuries?" The fox demon slowly shook its head. Zhou Yuntian hurriedly took out a healing pill from his storage bag and offered it to the fox demon. The fox demon did not stand on ceremony and swallowed it. A moment later, a pale-faced Yudaiwei came forward with an earthy yellow monster core in her hands and reported, "Your Honor, the giant ape is dead." The fox demon opened her eyes and looked at the demon pill in front of her. She nodded slightly, her expression calm with a hint of confusion. 18 years. She had spent every single day of these 18 years in hatred. Now that she had gotten her revenge, she was elated, but at the same time, she felt a sense of emptiness. It was as if she had lost her goal in life. He raised his head and looked at the many cultivators under his command. Almost all of them were injured and covered in dirt. She. Lu Yi and Xie Yunhan bowed and thanked her. "Rest here. We'll return to the valley in 6 hours." The cultivators answered. After the battle, everyone relaxed. They looked for a place to rest. There was no need to be vigilant. This was the territory of the overlord-level demonic beasts. No demonic beasts dared to come here. However, less than half of them were still alive. Even with this half, many of them were heavily injured. It had to be said, that was with the assistance of the hundreds of magic arrays that Lu Yi and Xie Yunhan had set up in advance. Additionally, the cultivators were under the control of the Fox Yaos and were fighting to the death. Not a single one of them managed to escape. Additionally, the cultivation bases of the cultivators from Immortal Fox Valley were generally higher. If the cultivators were to form a group to kill the giant berserk ape, they would need at least 200 to 300 people. The terror of overlord-level demonic beasts was evident. Among the cultivators, only 3 were uninjured. Li Baxian, Lu Yi and Xie Yunhan were in charge of the formations. The cultivators were meditating. The fox demon was also healing. Lu Yi said, "Fellow Taoist Xie, you should go and rest. I'll set up some vigilance formations." Xie Yunhan nodded. "Then I'll have to trouble you." Lu Yi walked to a place not far away. As he set up the formations, he raised his hand and tapped on the battlefield imprint. He sent a message. Soon there was a reply. Lu Yi checked and his eyes flashed. A moment later, he quietly returned and sat down cross-legged not far from the fox demon. He stuffed a few spirit pills into his mouth and silently refined them. Time passed. At a certain moment, some rustling sounds came from the quiet forest. The cultivators had excellent hearing. Hearing these sounds, the cultivators who were meditating opened their eyes. However, before they could figure out what was going on, huge wolves with silver fur suddenly appeared in front of them. These giant wolves swarmed out from all directions, surrounding everyone in an airtight encirclement. In the next moment, these demonic wolves seemed to have discussed it. On average, 6 to 7 wolves targeted a cultivator and directly attacked. Enemy attack. A furious roar broke the silence. Many cultivators stood up and immediately fought against the attacking demonic wolves. Zhou Yuntian shouted, "Protect the Venerable One." While shouting, he ran towards the fox demon. However, he had only taken a few steps before he was entangled by several demonic wolves. Somewhere in the crowd, Li Baxian gazed at this scene with astonishment. As he watched those familiar wolves dashing about on the battlefield, an uneasy feeling suddenly arose in his heart. However, before he could figure it out, a figure descended from the sky and landed before him. Li Baxian's expression changed. Yuechan? He never thought that Feng Yuechan would appear in front of him like this. Senior brother. Feng Yuechan stared at Li Baxian's eyes. She couldn't see anything special from his expression. However, with Lu Ye's previous messages, how could she not know that her senior brother's mind had been enslaved by the fox demon? She couldn't see anything unusual from his appearance. Why are you? Before Li Baxian could finish his words, he suddenly reacted and turned to look at the fox demon. The scene that entered his eyes made his soul fly out of his body. At some point, Lu Yi had arrived at the fox demon's side, looking like a loyal protector. However, just as everyone's attention was attracted by the sudden appearance of the wolf pack, the long saber in his hand suddenly ignited with flames. He aimed at the fox demon's back, and with lightning speed he thrust the saber forward. With a soft sound, the mountain coiling saber pierced through the fox demon's back and came out through her chest. The fox demon's eyes instantly widened. The other cultivators around her also felt a chill run down their spines. No one would have thought that Lu Yi would suddenly kill the fox demon. A faint light flashed on the mountain coiling saber as the grand thrust spirit inscription strengthened it. It was undeniable that the fox demon was very strong. Judging from the sword strike she had used to kill the great ape, her strength was comparable to a 9th-order Cloud River Realm cultivator. Lu Yi was no match for her in a head-on confrontation. However, she had been injured by the giant ape and was distracted by the sudden appearance of the wolf pack. In addition, she didn't think that the cultivators under her command would actually try to kill her, so she was completely unprepared for it. The fox demon's body was pierced through by the saber. Her expression was already twisted in pain, and the sudden eruption of the grand thrust spirit inscriptions caused her to cry out in pain. Blood sprayed from her mouth, and fragments of her internal organs could be vaguely seen. Angry roars rang out. The cultivators standing beside the fox demon finally reacted and attacked Lu Yi. However, Lu Yi had expected this situation when he attacked. When he succeeded, he drew his saber and repelled the fox demon, bringing out a burst of hot blood from the fox demon's body. Layers of defensive spirit tattoos appeared in front of him. Hong hong hong. The huge impact sent Lu Yi flying. When he landed on the ground, he saw the cultivators rushing towards him with boundless killing intent. Just a moment ago, he was a great hero praised by the fox demon, making all the cultivators in Fox Immortal Valley envious. Now, he was an enemy they had to kill. For these cultivators in the valley, the fox demon was their sky. Lu Yi's sudden betrayal was undoubtedly intolerable. Standing in place, Lu Yi did not move at all. Just as the cultivators were about to reach him, wolf howls came from behind him. Demon wolves the size of calves rushed out to meet the cultivators, and a battle immediately broke out. Separated by several dozen feet, the fox demon's gaze met with Lu Yi's. Her beautiful eyes trembled and were filled with disbelief. "You how?" Even now, she was still unable to accept the fact that one of her subordinates had suddenly stabbed her. On the other side, seeing the fox demon injured, Li Baxian wanted to come and protect her. However, Feng Yuechan activated her spirit chi and a huge cloud giant several dozen feet tall appeared in front of Li Baxian and stopped him. Her heart was filled with bitterness, but she didn't try to persuade Li Baxian. She knew that if she wanted to lift the soul secret technique, she had to let Lu Yi kill the fox demon. Her only task now was to keep Li Baxian busy and not let him get close to Lu Yi. Dong dong dong. It was as if a war hammer had struck the ground, causing the ground to tremble. A tall and burly figure rapidly approached the fox demon. When he was close enough, he punched out. The sound of the punch piercing through the air showed just how terrifying its power was. Shockingly, it was the attack of the giant armor. In the fox demon's current state, if she was hit by this punch, even if her strength was comparable to a Cloud River Realm 9th Order, she would die without a doubt. As she retreated, her eyes shone with a demonic light. Giant Armor's burly figure was reflected in her eyes. A strange energy fluctuated. Lu Yi, who was rushing towards the fox demon, felt this strange energy and his heart inexplicably jumped. A sense of unease grew in his heart. To be continued. Chapter 589. Looking up, he saw that giant armor was still in his punching posture with a look of intense struggle on his face. In an instant he stood in front of the fox demon and threw a punch at Lu Yi. Lu Yi leaped away and dodged the attack. The shock in his heart could not be any greater. In just a short exchange, giant armor's mind had been enslaved by the fox demon. What kind of heaven-defying technique was this? Lu Yi did not know how the fox demon could enslave a person's mind. He only guessed that it was her innate talent. However, according to the information Lu Yi had, even if the fox demon wanted to do this, she had to have direct contact with a person. Previously, when he pretended to be unconscious and was brought back to Fox Immortal Valley, the fox demon reached out and touched his forehead, then used a secret technique. He never thought that the fox demon would be able to use this secret technique from a distance without any direct contact. Furthermore, giant armor had once followed him into the soul-cleansing pool and tempered its soul there. Although it didn't benefit as much as he did, its soul was still much tougher than cultivators of the same level. Even so, it was enslaved by her with a single glance. The power of this fox demon's innate ability was far beyond Lu Ye's imagination. Lu Yi was caught off guard by the unexpected turn of events. Her trusted helper suddenly stood on the opposite side of her. What puzzled Lu Yi even more was why the fox demon did not die after being hit by his blade. His blade was aimed at the fox demon's heart. When it pierced through the fox demon's body, it was reinforced with thorny spirit patterns. There was no reason for the fox demon to survive. However, although this fellow's aura was as weak as a candle in the wind, she did not die. After forcing Lu Yi back with a punch, giant armor suddenly turned around and picked up the fox demon who was vomiting blood. He leaped into the sky and fled into the depths of Great Mang Mountain. Oh no! If he let giant armor take the fox demon away, then all his plans today would be for naught. He had waited in Fox Immortal Valley for so long, and today's opportunity finally came. There would be no next time. Furthermore, he had already been exposed today. If he really let giant armor take the fox demon away, he might not be able to find them in the future. Just as Lu Yi was thinking this, a slender figure suddenly appeared in front of the giant armor. It was Yi, who had been hiding nearby. At this moment, Yi went straight for the giant armor. She raised her hands and blasted out a few spells. The giant armor did not dodge, and the spells collided with the sky full of sparks. It held the severely injured fox demon in one hand and formed a fist with the other. It mercilessly punched at it. Lu Ye's heart tightened. However, at this moment, the 9-front formation appeared in Yi's hand. It expanded in the wind and turned into a giant screen that covered the sky, covering the giant armor. Caught off guard, giant armor's fist smashed into the formation map. It was as if it had smashed into an invisible space, and its entire arm was swallowed up. The giant armor wanted to retreat, but Lu Yi had already charged over. He kicked the giant armor's back viciously. It was as if he was kicking steel, and a dull thud was heard. He kicked the giant armor right into the 9-front formation. On the map, 2 figures immediately appeared in the middle of a stone forest. Well done! Lu Yi praised. He followed closely behind the giant armor and plunged into the 9-front formation. Inside the 9-front formation, the gloomy sky was like thick cotton wool, pressing down on one's heart to the point of suffocation. Strange vortexes rotated slowly in the sky, and the entire world gave off an extremely uncomfortable feeling. This was not a real world to begin with. It was just the space inside the 9-front formation. The giant armor was still holding the fox demon. It stood quietly under a stone pillar, glaring fiercely at Lu Yi who had chased after it. The expression on its face was unfamiliar to Lu Yi. The fox demon was still coughing up blood, a look of panic that had never appeared on her face before. Compared to her own tragic experience, what shocked her the most was Lu Ye's sudden betrayal. She had never thought that a cultivator under her command would betray her one day, and even bring her such great pain. They were dozens of feet apart. The giant armor did not move, and neither did Lu Yi. Although the giant armor's cultivation was the same as his, No one in this world knew better than Lu Yi how strong the giant armor's physical body was. If it was a fight to the death, he could certainly defeat the giant armor, but he would not have it easy either. However, the giant armor's mind was now enslaved. If he did not deal with the giant armor, he would not be able to cause any harm to the fox demon. It was truly a headache. "Who exactly are you?" the fox demon shouted through gritted teeth. Lu Yi glanced at her indifferently. His gaze was calm, as if he was looking at a dead person. After entering the 9-front formation, the fox demon was dead for sure. Now, he needed to think about how to bypass the giant armor and kill the fox demon. "You were never affected by my secret technique, were you?" the fox demon asked again. At this point, she finally understood something. Today's encounter was definitely not a coincidence. Lu Yi had planned it all along. He took advantage of the fact that the Fox Immortal Valley's people were relaxed after the battle with the giant raging ape and their strength was greatly weakened. He suddenly attacked and caught her off guard. At this moment, Yi's voice suddenly entered Lu Ye's ears. "Lu Yi, do you want to send in some demon wolves to help?" Lu Yi hurriedly refused. It would have been fine if he did not know that the fox demon could enslave people's minds from afar. Now that he knew, he could not allow anyone or demon beasts to enter the 9-front formation. Otherwise, not only would they be of help, but they would also make the situation worse. Even the giant armor could not block the fox demon's secret technique, let alone demon wolves. If he really sent them in, they would only become the fox demon's helpers. Therefore, he was the only one fighting in today's battle. Apart from Yi, he could not rely on anyone else. "I'll act according to the circumstances," Lu Yi softly muttered. His body arched slightly, and the mountain plate saber was held vertically in front of him. He stared at the giant armor and got into an attacking posture. In the next instant, dust flew under his feet. With the support of wind travel, his body pounced forward like lightning. In the blink of an eye, he was in front of the giant armor. The fiery saber slashed down viciously at the fox demon in the giant armor's arms. The giant armor raised its right arm. A mystic light bloomed on its right arm, forming a shield. The saber slashed down with a clanging sound. The force of the impact caused Lu Ye's body to lean back slightly. However, the mystic light shield on the giant armor's arm only trembled slightly. In the next instant, the mountain plate saber slashed down again, mercilessly at the fox demon. The fox demon's pupils shrank. Lu Ye's position in the Immortal Fox Valley had always been an array cultivator. The fox demon's greatest understanding of him was that he was extremely accomplished in the Tao of arrays. This time, the Immortal Fox Valley was able to smoothly kill the giant berserk ape because of the many spirit arrays arranged by Lu Yi. However, the fox demon had never expected that the array cultivator she relied heavily on would be able to display such strength. Lu Yi was only a 4th-order cultivator, but his strength was not inferior to the 6th or 7th-order cultivators in the valley. What surprised her even more was the giant armor's performance. Enslaving the giant armor was something she did out of helplessness. She never expected that this burly man, who had the same cultivation as Lu Yi and whom she had only met for the first time, would have such an eye-catching performance. Where did these monsters come from? I seem to have enslaved an incredible guy. Just as the fox demon's mind was wavering, Lu Yi and the giant armor had already clashed more than 10 times. Every time Lu Yi slashed down, he used his full strength without holding back. Every strike he slashed down was completely blocked by the giant armor. Although the fox demon knew that the giant armor's physique was strong and his defense was impressive, it was only after fighting him that she truly realized how terrifying his defense was. Although the giant armor was not injured, he was still in a difficult position under Lu Ye's continuous attacks. First, he was the passive party, and second, he had to spare some energy to protect the fox demon in his arms. Even if he didn't have any worries, he might not be Lu Ye's match if he were to fight him to the death, let alone now. Under the heavy blows of the saber, the giant armor's figure was constantly pushed back. On the other hand, Lu Ye's figure was getting closer and closer as the pressure on his body grew stronger and stronger. The fox demon sensed that something was wrong and suddenly raised her eyes to look at Lu Yi. Her beautiful eyes immediately turned into an abyss as the strange energy fluctuations fluctuated again. Even if she guessed that Lu Yi was unlikely to be affected by her secret technique, the fox demon still couldn't help but want to try. The strange energy invaded Lu Yi's mind, and his innate talent immediately ignited with a faint gray mist. The fox demon's eyes dimmed slightly. Sure enough, this guy has absolute resistance to my secret technique. But she really couldn't understand how a fourth-order Cloud River Realm cultivator could resist it. No matter how strong his mind is, it doesn't make sense that he wouldn't be affected by my secret technique. Another saber slashed down. As the saber fell, the mountain saber flashed with a brilliant light. The heavy pressure spirit rune was added to it. Giant Armor, who had raised his arm to block this attack, instantly lowered his body. He felt a tremendous force pressing down on him. He roared furiously, and a vast and violent power gushed out from his body, wanting to resist the suppression of this power. But in the next moment, the heavy pressure suddenly disappeared. The sudden change overwhelmed Giant Armor. His impregnable defense finally revealed a flaw, and even his figure staggered. Lu Yi pulled out his saber and stabbed it straight at the fox demon's face. A look of horror appeared on the fox demon's pale face. The fiery red saber light reflected in her beautiful eyes rapidly magnified in her vision. But in the end, the saber didn't take her life. At the critical moment, Giant Armor grabbed the mountain saber and gritted his teeth, refusing to let go even though the sharp edge of the saber cut his big hand and made it bleed. The corner of Lu Yi's eyes twitched. He leaped up and kicked out, using the rebound force to distance himself from Giant Armor. Poo. The fox demon coughed up blood. Her face was pale without a trace of blood. Although she had been protected by the Giant Armor all this time and hadn't been injured by Lu Yi, the battle between Lu Yi and the Giant Armor had been so violent that no matter how well the Giant Armor had protected her, she had still been injured quite a bit. Normally, this kind of shockwave wouldn't have affected her much, but she had been injured by the giant berserk ape and then Lu Yi's sneak attack. Now that she was seriously injured, the shockwaves from the repeated clashes were extremely uncomfortable. Giant Armor obviously noticed this. He lowered his head and looked at the fox demon in his arms, his eyes full of worry. Chapter 590. Before Lu Yi deployed and carried out his plan, he would never have thought that Giant Armor would be the one to obstruct his plan. This was truly the biggest joke in the world. At this point, if he wanted to kill the fox demon under Giant Armor's protection, he would have to kill Giant Armor first. This was an outcome that Lu Yi absolutely could not accept. Although his attack just now was ruthless and extremely violent, that was because he knew that Giant Armor could withstand it, so he did not hold back at all. At that moment, Lu Yi's eyes involuntarily lit up when he saw the fox demoness vomit blood. He suddenly discovered that he did not have to kill the Giant Armor to kill the fox demoness. He only needed to maintain his previous attacks. The Giant Armor could withstand it, but the heavily injured fox demoness definitely would not be able to withstand the shockwaves from their clash, no matter how well the Giant Armor protected her. With that thought, Lu Yi pounced on Giant Armor again. His blood, chi, and spiritual power surged as he brazenly attacked. His ferocious slashes were blocked time and time again. Every collision caused Giant Armor's body to tremble, and even the fox demon in his arms was affected. As time passed, Giant Armor's spiritual power protection was constantly shattered and reformed. Lu Yi was also panting. With his current strength, he could basically finish off a cultivator of the same level with a single slash. However, Lu Yi felt deeply powerless against Giant Armor. This fellow's defense was simply too strong. However, the effect was very obvious. Although Giant Armor was not injured, the fox demon in his arms was constantly bleeding, and her aura was getting weaker. Until a certain moment, when Lu Yi's slash landed, Giant Armor's fist blasted out, hitting the mountain slash squarely. The spiritual power on the fist shattered, and a trace of a dent appeared on Giant Armor's fist. Lu Yi was also sent flying by the impact of this punch. At this moment, The fox demon, who had been protected in giant armor's arms and was as fragile as a candle in the wind, suddenly leaped up and pounced straight at Lu Yi. Lu Yi was horrified. Ever since she was sucked into the nine-front formation, the fox demon was so weak that she could die at any moment. As Lu Yi and giant armor fought, her condition became worse and worse, causing Lu Yi to think that she was about to die. But now, looking at her posture, everything just now was just a disguise, all for this momentary counterattack. This caught Lu Yi off guard. As her figure flew through the air, the fox demon's pale face was filled with ruthlessness and determination. 5 sharp nails suddenly pierced out of her jade hand and clawed at Lu Yi's head. Lu Yi hurriedly steadied himself and slashed out with his saber, directly splitting the fox demon's figure into 2. There were no screams, no blood, and there wasn't even the slightest sensation of cutting anything. A great danger came from behind, accompanied by Yi's cry of alarm. The fox demon's figure in front of him collapsed. It was only an afterimage. At the same time, Lu Yi clearly sensed a fatal aura approaching a foot behind him. During this period of time, under Xiao Yang's guidance, he had cultivated the Heart's Eye secret technique. Every day, he would train himself in the Mirage realm. His Heart's Eye secret technique had reached the small completion, and he could clearly sense any attack that came within 1 foot of him. His body reacted before his mind. A defensive spirit rune suddenly appeared behind his head, and at the same time, Lu Yi stabbed out with his saber. With a cracking sound, the defense that had just taken shape shattered. Lu Yi felt a cold, stinging sensation from the top of his head as a sharp aura pierced through his skin and pressed against his skull. An unprecedented sense of danger enveloped his body and mind. Lu Yi knew that if the other party didn't stop, he would definitely die in the next moment. Fortunately, he stabbed his saber behind him while activating the defensive spirit rune. It was this move that saved him from the fate of being killed. The fox demon decisively stopped and flew out. If she didn't stop, she would definitely end up in a situation where she perished together with Lu Yi. This was something she absolutely couldn't accept. In front, giant armor, who had been blasted back, stabilized himself and was about to pounce on Lu Yi. Lu Yi growled, "Yi." As soon as he said that, an invisible force appeared out of thin air. The space around giant armor distorted, and then, giant armor disappeared. He had been forcefully sent out of the 9-spirit array by Yi. The 9-spirit array was a spirit artifact-grade treasure. As Yi's cultivation increased, the power she could unleash increased. Yi's current strength was comparable to a 3rd-order Cloud River Realm cultivator. She could control the 9-spirit array, and not only could she draw enemies into the array, she could also interfere with them to a certain extent. Giant armor had been guarding the fox demon in his arms. Lu Yi was originally thinking about how to separate them. As long as he separated them, Yi could use the power of the 9-spirit array to send giant armor away. Then, he would be able to attack the fox demon without restraint. However, giant armor never gave him this opportunity. He didn't expect that the fox demon would create such a good opportunity to kill him. How could he miss such an opportunity? Even without Lu Ye's order, she would have sent giant armor away immediately. When giant armor suddenly disappeared, a look of panic flashed across the fox demon's pale face. She knew that she had made an extremely stupid decision. She was so regretful that her intestines turned green. Her original intention was to kill Lu Yi. In fact, if she hadn't flinched at that moment, Lu Yi would have died without a doubt. However, how could she be willing to die together with Lu Yi? Now that giant armor had been sent out of the 9-spirit array, she was left to face Lu Yi alone. Everything pointed to disaster. A bitter smile appeared on the fox demon's face. She had finally gotten her revenge, but she didn't expect to fall into such a dangerous situation in the blink of an eye. Was it retribution for all the bad things she had done over the years? Lu Yi turned around. There was a 5-fingered mark on his head. Blood flowed out and slid down his cheeks, adding a hint of ferocity to his calm expression. "It's just you and me," he said calmly. The flames on the mountain coiling saber ignited again. A look of determination appeared on the fox demon's tired and weak face. Even though she knew that she was doomed this time, She wouldn't just sit and wait for death. She hadn't gone back to comfort her master and tell him that she had gotten her revenge, so she couldn't die no matter what. She didn't know where her strength came from, but the fox demon, who was supposed to be at the end of her rope, suddenly revealed her true form with a muffled sound. She was a heavenly fox that was more than 10 feet tall. She had snow-white fur all over her body, a pointy mouth and green eyes. Behind her, 6 furry tails swayed wantonly. Although she was in her true form, the fox demon still gave off an extremely seductive feeling. Anyone who saw her would probably fall for her. Even Lu Yi, who was determined to kill, was slightly shaken when he saw the fox demon's true form. However, his eyes quickly regained their clarity. The fox demon let out a low growl. Lu Ye's figure was reflected in her green eyes. Her eyes were filled with unwillingness and anger. Without waiting for Lu Yi to attack, she suddenly swung her furry tails. Several balls of pink fox fire suddenly shot towards Lu Yi at an incredible speed. At the same time, she dashed towards Lu Yi. The long saber in Lu Ye's hand slashed down, shattering several balls of foxfire. However, the shattered foxfire didn't disappear. Instead, it turned into even smaller flames. Lu Yi didn't pay attention and the few balls of foxfire touched his body. In an instant, several holes appeared on his clothes. A slight tingling sensation came from his skin, but Lu Ye's mind began to shake violently. It felt like an invisible impact had fiercely shaken his mind, causing him to see stars and illusions. For a moment, green, purple, white, and gold lights filled his vision. He couldn't see anything else. This foxfire didn't have much killing power, but it had the ability to shake one's mind. Lu Yi immediately reacted, but it was already too late. The fox demon had already arrived in front of him. Her sharp claws viciously slashed down. With a ripping sound, the clothes on Lu Ye's chest were torn apart. Several bone-deep wounds appeared on his chest, and his flesh was badly mutilated. In the battle with the giant berserk ape, the fox demon hadn't made a move from beginning to end. She only stabbed the giant berserk ape once when it was about to die, so Lu Ye's understanding of her was only that she was a monster beast comparable to a Cloud River 9th Order cultivator. He didn't expect that the fox fire used by the fox demon would have such a strange ability. However, the fox demon had the innate ability to control one's mind. The fox fire itself didn't have much killing power, but it could shake one's mind. This was understandable. However, this strange ability couldn't be countered by a Cloud River realm cultivator. In a single exchange, Lu Yi was injured. Borrowing the force of his opponent's attack, he floated backwards and slashed out with his saber. However, the fox demon's movements were extremely fast. Just as he stabilized his body and calmed his shaking mind, the fox demon swung her furry tail and sent several balls of foxfire towards him. After suffering once, Lu Yi wouldn't suffer a second time. He immediately dodged, but the foxfire was like a maggot in his bones. When it got close, it exploded, filling the sky with sparks. Even though Lu Yi activated his defensive spirit rune in time, he couldn't completely avoid it. A few more sparks landed on his body. Lu Yi's vision was once again filled with illusions, and he couldn't see clearly. At this moment, the Heart's Eye secret technique played a miraculous role. Just now, he was caught off guard and his mind was shaken, so he couldn't defend against the fox demon's attack. However, this time, he was prepared and immediately sensed that there was an attack coming from his left. The mountain coiling saber slashed out, and the flesh on his right arm bulged slightly. A faint cry like a baby's cry rang out. By the time Lu Yi came back to his senses, the fox demon had stopped 10 feet away from him. Her snow-white fur was stained with dark red blood. She was already injured. Her green eyes were filled with shock. She obviously didn't expect Lu Yi to be able to counterattack so accurately in such a situation. Lu Yi called out softly, wanting her to provide some help. I can't leave. Giant armor is chasing me. Yi's voice traveled into his ears. If no one disturbed her, Yi could still activate the power of the 9-front formation to help. However, after she forcefully sent giant armor out, it kept chasing after her. Yi was also very helpless. Now, she could only maintain the operation of the 9-front formation and provide a place for Lu Yi to kill the fox demon. Fortunately, although Giant Armor's physique was strong, its greatest weakness was that it wasn't fast enough. Thus, Yi didn't have to worry about it for the time being. Chapter 591. Lu Yi took a light breath and looked at the fox demon. He couldn't count on Yi, so he could only rely on himself. He secretly rejoiced that he had learned the mind's eye secret technique from Xia Liang and had a perfect training ground like the Mirage Realm, allowing him to achieve some minor success in the mind's eye secret technique in an extremely short period of time. Otherwise, this battle would really be difficult. However, the threat of the foxfire still couldn't be underestimated. His spirit was powerful, so the power of his mind was also extremely tough. Even so, his mind was still in turmoil when he was attacked by the foxfire. If it were an ordinary Cloud River tier cultivator who was hit by the foxfire, they would probably be stabbed in the neck. This fox demon could be domineering in the Fox Immortal Valley for close to 20 years. Sure enough, she didn't just rely on that strange spirit secret technique. This foxfire was probably a power she had never revealed in front of others. Looking at the vigilant fox demon in front of him, Lu Yi slowly closed his eyes. Exclamation point! The fox demon's green eyes narrowed slightly. Cloud River tier cultivators more or less had their own perception, but because it didn't involve the cultivation of the spirit, this kind of perception was extremely weak. Usually, it could be used to perceive some things, but in a real life and death battle, the perception of a Cloud River tier cultivator couldn't be relied on at all. However, the enemy in front of her actually closed his eyes. This made the fox demon momentarily unsure of what Lu Yi wanted to do. However, she didn't have time to think too much. Only she knew how serious her injuries were, and the strength she could use now was limited. She had to kill this traitor in front of her in the shortest time possible to have any hope of survival. Thus, with only a moment of hesitation, a few more balls of foxfire flew toward Lu Yi, followed closely by the fox demon's fierce killing intent. The foxfire floated within a foot of Lu Yi and suddenly exploded, turning into little sparks that fell on his body. At this moment, Lu Yi frowned slightly. Obviously, he had been hit by a strange force again, and his mind was shaken and uneasy. It was also at this moment that the fox demon that pounced over stretched out her sharp claws. She raised her long saber and stabbed it at an incredible angle. The fox demon's eyes couldn't help but narrow, and she hurriedly dodged. She looked at Lu Yi, whose eyes were still closed, in shock and uncertainty. She quickly launched another attack, still using foxfire to open the way, and her true body followed closely behind. However, the exact same thing happened again. The fox demon retreated, feeling extremely shocked. If the first time was a coincidence, then the second time definitely wasn't. This guy could actually block my attack with his eyes closed? On what basis? It had not been easy for her to get her revenge. Now, she only had one wish, and that was to return to Fox Immortal Valley and comfort her master's spirit in front of his grave. However, her final wish was getting further and further away from her. On what basis? The heavens were so unfair. The mournful howl of a fox rang out, and when it reached Lu Ye's ears, it shook his mind, causing him to frown. Along with the howl, the foxfire that blotted out the sky and covered the earth fell in an endless stream. The fox demon's true body was hidden in the foxfire, and it launched a crazy attack on Lu Yi. Lu Yi stood in place and defended himself. The damage caused by the foxfire was negligible. The foxfire itself didn't have much lethality, but the impact of the foxfire on his mind was unavoidable. Moreover, the fox demon's angry attacks couldn't be underestimated. Even if she was seriously injured and couldn't display her full strength, she was still a monster beast comparable to a 9th-order Cloud River Realm cultivator. If Lu Yi didn't have a foundation that far surpassed cultivators of the same level, he wouldn't have been able to block her attacks. Bloody wounds constantly appeared on his body. The Heart's Eye secret technique could indeed allow him to react correctly to dangers within a foot of him, but the foxfire's impact on his mind was unavoidable. Many times he simply couldn't react in time. This can't go on. Even if Lu Yi knew that the fox demon was an arrow at the end of its flight and couldn't maintain this kind of attack for long, it was hard to say who would die first if this continued. I have to find a way to resolve the foxfire's impact on me. But is there any way to resolve this strange foxfire? Lu Ye's mind raced as he suddenly realized something. No matter why the foxfire could affect one's mind, it was still a ball of fire. Since it's fire, there's no reason for me to fear it. He recalled the scene of him entering the Land of Fire on the Spirit Stream battlefield. The Land of Fire and the 10,000 Poison Forest were both sacred grounds of the Spirit Stream battlefield. It was difficult for cultivators to penetrate them. Some Spirit Stream realm cultivators with strong foundations might be able to set foot on the periphery of these two sacred grounds, but no one had ever been able to enter their depths. Especially in the Land of Fire, even the Overlord-level Banshee found it difficult to approach. One had to know that the Overlord-level Banshee was a fire attribute monster beast. But Lu Yi had gone in, and not only had he only been a 7th Order Heaven cultivator at the time, he had even obtained the Phoenix True Fire and activated the Fire Phoenix Spirit Tattoo on his talent tree. The reason he was able to enter the heart of the Land of Fire was not because of his own cultivation, but because of his talent tree. At that time, when he was in a difficult situation, he suddenly had an idea and activated the talent tree's power, allowing the talent tree's invisible roots to cover his entire body, isolating him from the cruel environment of the Land of Fire. The talent tree's power could even isolate an environment like the Land of Fire. Could it also isolate the foxfire's impact on him? If it could, then his mind would no longer be affected by the foxfire, and he would be able to freely kill the monster fox. With a thought, Lu Yi immediately activated the talent tree. As he immersed his mind, he saw the talent tree that was entrenched in his source spirit aperture suddenly grow roots, then spread out, as if probing into an unknown space, and disappeared. If Lu Yi activated the Inside Spirit Tattoo at this moment to inspect his body, he would see many root-like things all over his body, gently swaying along with the flow of his spirit chi. His mind seemed to be weighed down by a heavy burden, and the power of his mind was rapidly being consumed. Activating the talent tree did not consume his spirit chi, but the power of his mind. Usually, when Lu Yi let the talent tree devour the earth fire, the consumption was very small, but at this moment, the consumption was more than 100 times higher than usual. After all, his whole body was wrapped in the roots of the talent tree, and when he devoured the earth fire, only a few roots spread out from his body. He suddenly opened his eyes and saw the crazy and persistent green eyes of the monster fox, who was moving and jumping not far in front of him, interfering with his judgment. With the support of wind travel, his figure rushed out, directly facing the foxfire in front of him. Fight a quick battle. The monster fox did not know what happened to Lu Ye's body. Seeing Lu Yi actually take the initiative to crash into her foxfire, she was shocked and angry, and her beautiful figure jumped up to meet Lu Yi. However, in the next moment, the monster fox was wrapped in a chill. It was because Lu Ye's figure rushed out from the foxfire, and no matter how the foxfire exploded on his body, his firm eyes did not waver. Impossible! In shock, the monster fox actually spoke human language. However, for a demonic beast like her who could transform into human form, even in the state of her true body, it was not difficult to speak human language. She knew the power of her foxfire. If an ordinary Cloud River tier cultivator touched it, they would immediately fall into an illusion and be unable to extricate themselves. The shortest would be 3 to 5 breaths, and the longest would be 10 breaths. However, this traitor who betrayed her and the Fox Celestial Valley had shown a great resistance to her foxfire before, and her foxfire had only affected him for a moment. This could be explained by his mind being strong enough, but how could he not be affected at all? Could the power of his mind be comparable to the Spirit Ocean tier? However, from the other party's calm eyes, he was indeed not affected at all. While the monster fox was shocked, the distance between the man and the fox had been shortened to the limit. The bright light of a blade flashed in the monster fox's vision, and she only felt a pain in front of her. The huge impact sent her flying, blood splattering in the air, and she fell in a sorry state. In the blink of an eye, a figure had already landed in front of her, carrying a murderous aura. The power of the blade enveloped her like a storm, and each strike was fatal. The fox fire reappeared, but this time it could not cause the slightest disturbance to Lu Yi. Without the fox fire to rely on, the monster fox, who was also an arrow at the end of its flight, had no power to resist this kind of attack. Blood splattered, and the sound of the blade slicing through flesh rang out. Her snow-white fur was dyed red by the dark red blood, and the shocking color rendered her incomparably miserable. As Lu Yi swung the blade again, the monster fox fell heavily to the ground. This time, she was unable to stand up. She lay there, gasping for air, and the light in her eyes had become extremely dim. Lu Yi held the mountain pan blade and stepped forward, looking down at the monster fox in front of him. The monster fox turned her eyes, but her vision was blurry. She could no longer see Lu Ye's face clearly, and could only make out a vague outline. So, the heavens have already punished me. In the last moment of her life, she seemed to have understood something, and she muttered to herself. In these past years, she had continuously used her soul secret technique to enslave cultivators on the Cloud River battlefield. Those who dared to enter the depths of the Great Mang Mountains were all outstanding cultivators of the Cloud River tier. In the past 18 years, if not 1,000 cultivators had died because of her, then at least 800. As the number of cultivators she enslaved increased, the inexplicable sense of danger became more and more intense. She knew that one day, the heavens would punish her for her actions. She had originally thought that it would be a punishment similar to the soul-extinguishing divine lightning on the Spirit Stream battlefield. However, she had never imagined that this punishment would be handed down in such a way, and under such circumstances that she was completely unaware of. It was not until the last moment of her life that she finally understood the truth. Lu Yi stood in front of the monster fox, and could sense her current state, but the words that came out of her mouth puzzled him greatly. However, he did not delve too deeply into it, and simply treated it as the monster fox's last words. He raised the mountain pan blade high. "That's fine too." A flash of blade light appeared in her vision, and the monster fox felt relieved. No matter what, she had avenged her master. Perhaps this could be considered the final gift from the heavens. Master, Xian, has come to accompany you. Chapter 592. In the 9-front array, as Lu Ye's saber fell, the fox monster's head was separated, and its vitality was completely destroyed. He let out a long breath and shook off the blood on the mountain plate saber. His mind relaxed, and his body staggered slightly. The battle with the fox monster was not dangerous. It was mainly because he had used up too much of his mental strength in a short period of time, which made him feel a little tired. His body was covered in wounds, but none of them hurt his muscles or bones. With his physique, it would not be difficult for him to recover. What's the situation? What's the situation outside? Lu Yi asked. Logically speaking, the fox monster was dead. According to the soul secret technique she planted, it should have been broken by itself. But if that was not the case, he could not be sure. Yi's voice quickly entered his ears. Everyone has returned to normal, but a few cultivators from Myriad Demon Ridge ran away immediately, including Xia Liang and Tan Xing. That dog reacted quickly. Lu Yi secretly gritted his teeth. Originally, he planned to kill Tan Xing and Xia Liang after killing the fox monster. Although he had been cultivating with Xia Liang during this period of time, he had never forgotten the hatred between them. If he was not taken into the 9-front array, he could immediately interfere with the battlefield after killing the fox monster, but he was in the 9-front array, so he could not control the situation outside. Xia Liang and Tan Xing knew the wolf pack. After all, they had suffered a big loss in the spirit land. So, after getting rid of the fox monster's control, the first thing they did was to escape. Both of them were in the 9th order. If they wanted to escape, the wolf pack really did not have any good ideas. Although it was a pity, they could only accept it. Lu Yi took a few steps forward. He walked to the fox monster's corpse. He searched the corpse for a while. He found a storage bag. This was the fox monster's storage bag. She had always carried it with her. Now that she was dead, it naturally became Lu Ye's spoils of war. Lu Yi didn't know how many good things she had. The only thing he knew was that there was a demonic core of an overlord-class demonic beast. The demonic core she obtained from killing the giant berserk ape was kept in her storage pouch. This was a rare good thing that was hard to come by in 100 years. The overlord-level demon beasts of the Cloud River battlefield had rarely been killed since ancient times. Just by looking at the operation of the Fox Immortal Valley, it was clear that if the cultivators were to form a group to deal with them, without a formation of 200 to 300 people, it would be impossible to succeed. Furthermore, it would be accompanied by a huge loss. It was simply not worth it. Therefore, cultivators would not provoke the overlord-level demonic beasts on the Cloudy River battlefield, let alone kill them. This time, they were able to kill the giant berserk ape because of the fox demon's hatred. The cultivators were also imbued with her soul's secret technique, which made them fearless of death. Moreover, Lu Yi and Xie Yunhan had set up many formations in advance to assist them. Just by holding the monster core of such an overlord-level monster beast in his hand, Lu Yi could feel the vigorous energy within. If he gave it to Hu Po to swallow and refine, it would definitely be of great benefit. The spoils of war were naturally not limited to this. Lu Yi placed his hand on the demon fox's corpse and silently examined it for a moment. Then he raised his Panshan saber and stabbed it down. A moment later, another demon core was extracted. This was the demon fox's demon core. Although it couldn't compare to the monster core of an overlord-level monster beast, it was still quite valuable. After wiping away the bloodstains on the demon core, Lu Yi looked at it in astonishment. The demon core was only the size of an infant's fist. It was a strange pink color and emitted a faint glow, as if it was a burning flame. So, pill fire? Pill fire wasn't a flame used for alchemy, but rather the monster core of a fire attribute monster beast. Lu Yi had bought quite a few of them in the Tianji treasury and had let his talent tree devour them. Thinking about it carefully, this demon fox had used a fox fire that could shake one's mind when fighting with him. It could indeed be considered a fire attribute monster beast. In the Tianji treasury, there were all kinds of pill fires with different prices. There were several hundred, thousands, and tens of thousands of merit points. There was even a strange flame called the Extreme Cold Ice Flame that was worth a total of 180,000 merit points. He didn't know how much this demon fox's demon core was worth, but it shouldn't be too expensive. Since it was a pill fire, he could naturally devour it. With a thought from Lu Yi, several roots grew out from his talent tree and extended into an invisible space. In the next moment, the luster of the pill fire in his hand quickly dimmed as its energy was devoured by the talent tree. Immersing himself in investigating the changes in his talent tree was just a habit. Lu Yi didn't expect a demon core to cause too much of a change in his talent tree. But what surprised him was that as the demon core devoured the demon core's energy, a leaf near the top of the talent tree suddenly reacted and began to burn at a speed visible to the naked eye. Different from the blazing flames of the other leaves, this leaf burned with the same pink color as the demon fox's demon core. This was the first time Lu Yi had encountered something like this. He was momentarily stunned. A moment later, the demon core in his hand was exhausted and turned into dust. A leaf burning with pink flames appeared on his talent tree, making it stand out from the crowd. Lu Yi faintly felt that he had misjudged the value of the demon fox's demon core. After all, it was the demon core of a six-tailed heavenly fox. It couldn't be taken lightly. Just from the fact that it could cause such a change in his talent tree, one could tell that the demon core was extremely valuable. Lu Yi suppressed the doubts in his heart. He didn't immediately investigate the information contained within the burning leaf. Now that he was injured and his mental strength was severely depleted, there were still many things waiting for him to deal with outside. He couldn't afford to delay. Yi! Lu Yi called out softly. He understood tacitly and activated the power of the nine-front formation. In the next moment, Lu Ye's figure was expelled from the nine-front formation. Just as he steadied himself, Hoopa scurried over from the side and squatted on his shoulder. Hoopa was very shrewd. When the demon fox enslaved giant armor with a glance, it jumped off Lu Ye's body and hid far away. It was afraid that it would be enslaved by the demon fox. There were no more sounds of fighting in the surroundings. Many demon wolves were quietly guarding the side. The remaining cultivators of Fox Immortal Valley were also gathered together, their faces filled with sorrow. When their minds were enslaved by the demon fox, they didn't feel that their actions were wrong. However, when the demon fox died and their soul secret technique was broken, their experiences over the years immediately surged into their minds. They all asked themselves, "What have I done?" This was especially true for Xie Yunhan. He had stayed in Fox Immortal Valley for a total of 12 years. He had completely cut off contact with his sect and family. His cultivation hadn't improved much, and he had wasted his time. Although the others hadn't stayed as long as Xie Yunhan, they had at least spent a year or two. When they thought of their days in Fox Immortal Valley, they all felt ashamed and uneasy. When they saw Lu Yi appear, everyone gathered around him. Fellow Taoist Lu. Zhou Yuntian, who was covered in blood, bowed to Lu Yi and asked somewhat nervously, "Is that demon fox dead?" Although they knew that the demon fox was definitely dead the moment their soul secret technique was broken, they didn't dare to be certain before they received an answer. The demon fox had left too much psychological trauma on them. "I've killed the demon fox." "Fellow Taoists, you don't have to worry," Lu Yi said. Not only was the demon fox killed, but its demon core had also been devoured by the talent tree. He just didn't know if he could obtain any new spirit runes. Hearing this, everyone heaved a long sigh of relief. Their nervous expressions relaxed a lot. Zhou Yuntian bowed again. "We were trapped and were unknowingly deceived by the demon fox. This time, it's all thanks to fellow Taoist Lu for saving us. Such kindness is equivalent to giving us a new lease of life. If fellow Taoist has any instructions in the future, we won't dare to disobey." The others also bowed solemnly and expressed their gratitude. Lu Yi returned the bow. "Fellow Taoists, you don't have to be so polite. I was just saving myself. It's a pity that many of you lost your lives in the end." Xie Yunhan sighed. "It's fate. Brother Lu, it's already very impressive that you can save us." Although everyone didn't know how Lu Yi had the ability to command such a pack of wolves to help in the battle, no matter how powerful and numerous the wolves were, they might not be able to do anything against the power of the Fox Immortal Valley at its peak. Lu Ye's choice to make a move after the bloody battle with the giant berserk ape in the Fox Immortal Valley was undoubtedly the wisest choice. Moreover, when the demon wolves besieged them, they had clearly received orders in advance to only surround them and not kill them. Otherwise, there probably wouldn't be many people standing here now. No matter what, we've finally escaped the demon fox's control. This is a blessing. Everyone, you don't have to be so worried. Think about your sect. Think about your brothers and sisters. In the future, we don't have to be slaves anymore, Zhou Yuntian said. Someone said faintly, "Fellow Taoist Zhou, now that you mention it, I miss home." Everyone suddenly fell silent as a look of longing appeared in their eyes. In the Fox Immortal Valley, with the demon fox's orders, no one dared to communicate with the outside world. All these years, the relatives and friends of the Fox Immortal Valley cultivators had been searching for them and sending them messages. Previously, when they were under the demon fox's control, they didn't think much of it. Now that they were free, a tsunami-like longing immediately surged up. "Then, let's go home?" Someone whispered softly. Zhou Yuntian raised his arm and shouted, "If we don't go back now, then when?" Once the longing surged up, it could no longer be controlled. Everyone couldn't wait to return to their sects, their hometowns, and tell their families about the pain of separation. "Let's go home," someone shouted. For a moment, everyone was excited. Zhou Yuntian turned to look at Lu Yi. "Fellow Taoist Lu, what do you plan to do?" Lu Yi thought for a moment. "Senior brother and I just entered the Cloudy River battlefield not long ago, so we won't be returning for the time being. Moreover, I'm still injured and need to rest for a while. Fellow Taoists, please feel free to leave." Zhou Yuntian originally wanted to persuade Lu Yi to leave with them. After all, this was the depths of the Great Mang Mountains and there were many powerful demon beasts. However, he suddenly remembered that Lu Yi had a pack of demon wolves protecting him, so there shouldn't be any danger. He didn't say anything else and nodded. Since that's the case, fellow Taoist Lu, please take care. If you need help in the future, just let me know. Everyone said their goodbyes to Lu Yi and exchanged their battlefield imprints with him. A moment later, many cultivators flew up on their artifacts and quickly left under the gazes of Lu Yi, Li Baxian, and the others. This group of people all had decent cultivations, so as long as they didn't encounter any overlord demon beasts, they wouldn't be in any danger. Almost at the same time that Zhou Yuntian and the others left, Lu Yi suddenly had a strange feeling. It was as if something had fallen from the sky and landed on his body. The back of his hand also felt slightly warm. Chapter 593. The strange feeling that suddenly fell from the sky was familiar, as if he had encountered it somewhere before. Lu Yi carefully thought about it, and quickly realized what this familiar feeling was. This was the blessing of heaven. Back in the hidden realm of the 10,000 beasts, he had obtained the Beast Seal Technique and Life Origin Technique from the 10,000 Beasts Sect's Grand Elder. Xia Qianqian had told him that if he sold these things that could change the situation of a sect to the hidden realm of heavens, he would receive the blessing of heaven. It would increase his own fortune. Reality proved that this was indeed the case. After leaving the hidden realm of the 10,000 beasts, he had sold the Jade Slip with the Beast Seal Technique and Life Origin Technique to the hidden realm of heavens. Not only had he received many merits, but he had also received the blessing of heaven. It was the same feeling as before. The main reason he had been able to turn misfortune into fortune in the hunting ground was because he had obtained a golden body medallion. However, such a heaven-defying treasure like the golden body medallion was extremely precious. It was something that even cultivators of the Divine Sea realm would covet, yet he, a mere cultivator of the Cloud River realm, had obtained it. Moreover, he had obtained it from the spoils of war. Not only had he turned misfortune into fortune, but he had also obtained first place on the hunting grounds bounty list, receiving a reward from heaven. Wasn't all of this a manifestation of his own fortune? Although luck was something that could not be seen or touched, it was constantly affecting him. Last time, he had obtained the blessing of heaven because he had brought out something that could change the situation of a sect from the hidden realm of the 10,000 beasts. But this time, he had killed the fox demon and saved those cultivators, and he also received a reward? He suddenly recalled the inexplicable words the fox demon had said before she died. So heaven has already sent down its punishment. Lu Yi didn't know what she had meant, but now that he combined it with his own experience, he vaguely understood. The fox demon had been tyrannical in the Fox Immortal Valley for 20 years. She had used a sole secret technique that should not have appeared on the Cloud River battlefield to enslave many cultivators and avenge her. Over the years, countless cultivators had died because of her. Although he had killed her to protect himself and save Li Baxian, in the end, it could be considered a blessing. He had not killed the fox demon this time. In the future, there might be even more cultivators who would be unlucky enough to suffer. The reason why he entered the Fox Immortal Valley was because he had followed Li Baxian to chase after Tan Sheng and Xiao Liang, and encountered Zhou Yuntian and the others. Now that he thought about it, when Tan Sheng and Xiao Liang escaped from the spiritual land, they should have fled to the outskirts of the Great Mang Mountains. But for some reason, the two of them actually fled to the depths of the Great Mang Mountains. This was obviously not in line with the situation the two of them were in at the time, and no matter what, two Cloud River Ninth Order cultivators should not have made such a foolish decision. He and Li Baxian chased them all the way until they encountered Zhou Yuntian and the others. Then they were brought into the Fox Immortal Valley. Coincidentally, he had the talent tree and was not affected by the fox demon's soul mystic technique. Even more coincidentally, he had a pack of wolves that he could command. Even the battle against the giant berserk ape in Fox Immortal Valley was unbelievably smooth. The fox demon had not been able to get her revenge for 20 years, and not long after Lu Yi came to Fox Immortal Valley, she helped her complete her revenge plan. Everything seemed reasonable, but if one thought about it carefully, one would discover that there were many incomprehensible coincidences. It was as if there was a pair of invisible hands pushing everything from behind. Heavenly mystery. What in the world is that? Was he the punishment given to the fox demon by heaven's secret? He had killed the fox demon and resolved this calamity. Was that why the heavens had once again favored him? As his thoughts churned, Lu Yi suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. He lowered his head and looked at the back of his hand. When heaven's secret blessed him, he felt a slight warmth on the back of his hand. Looking at it now, Lu Yi was surprised, because a golden mark had appeared on the back of his hand. It was exactly the same as the mark given to him by heaven's secret when he got first place on the hunting list. Not only did heaven's secret bless him, but it also gave him a reward. However, Lu Yi did not know what this reward was. The reward for getting first place on the hunting list was obvious. As for what this reward was, he would have to return to the spirit land and borrow the heaven's secret pillar to find out. Collecting his thoughts, Lu Yi looked to the side. Giant Armor was standing there with his eyebrows lowered, looking unhappy. Obviously, he was still angry about how he attacked Lu Yi and chased after. Dispelling the distracting thoughts in his mind, Lu Yi stepped forward and patted his shoulder, comforting him, "Don't mind it. Even fourth senior brother couldn't resist the fox demon's secret technique, let alone you." Giant Armor looked up at him. Although he was still silent, his expression was much more relaxed. Lu Yi turned to look at Li Baxin, only to see Feng Yuechan smiling. "Senior brother, what's up with that fellow Taoist you? She seems to have a good relationship with you." Before the group of Fox Immortal Valley cultivators left, Yu Daiwei deliberately said goodbye to Li Baxin. Feng Yuechan saw the difference in her expression and tone, which made her furious. Li Baxin's expression did not change. She's also a sword cultivator. When we were in Fox Immortal Valley, she often came to spar with me. Actually, I'm not very familiar with her. TSK, why am I telling you this? Also, I'm your martial uncle. What are you shouting for? He raised his hand and hammered Feng Yuechan's head. Feng Yuechan's cheeks puffed up slightly, looking angry. Li Baxin walked towards Lu Yi and asked with concern, "How are your injuries, junior brother?" "They're all flesh wounds. It's not a big deal." Li Baxin sighed. "I didn't expect there to be such a dangerous monster beast in the Cloud River battlefield. When she enslaved me with the soul secret technique, I didn't feel anything wrong at all. Now that I think about it, it's really scary. Speaking of which, junior brother, how did you get rid of that soul secret technique?" This was what he didn't understand the most. When he was brought back with Lu Yi and the others that day, logically speaking, they should all have been implanted with a soul secret technique, but Lu Yi hadn't shown any flaws these days. It wasn't until today that he learned that his little junior brother had never been affected by the fox monster's soul secret technique and had been secretly plotting to kill it. Before Lu Yi could answer, Feng Yuechan spoke first. "Stupid senior brother, have you forgotten how powerful junior brother Lu's soul secret technique is? That soul secret technique was just a monster general. Even if it could use the soul secret technique, it wouldn't affect junior brother Lu at all." Li Baxin and Feng Yuechan both knew that Lu Yi had obtained a lot of soul cleansing water. Soul cleansing water was a divine item that could strengthen a cultivator's soul. Li Baxin had also received some from Lu Yi. Lu Yi had the ability to give it to others, which meant he must have used a lot of it himself. Feng Yuechan naturally thought that Lu Yi being able to get rid of the soul cleansing water was related to his powerful soul. This was something Lu Yi was happy to see. He couldn't explain too much about his talent tree, so he followed Feng Yuechan's words and said, "Senior sister Feng is right. But this time, it's all thanks to junior brother. Otherwise, I'm afraid I wouldn't have survived." Feng Yuechan said, "Junior brother is still injured. Let him heal first. Senior brother has something to ask you. Come with me." Li Baxin frowned, but before he could speak, Feng Yuechan pulled him aside. Lu Yi shook his head and smiled, but he really needed to rest for a while. With the wolves guarding him, there was no need to worry about any danger. Finding a place, he sat down cross-legged and threw some spirit pills and a healing pill into his mouth, silently refining them. Half a day later, he had more or less recovered his spirit energy. Lu Yi immersed his mind and checked the pink leaf on the talent tree. Focusing his mind, a large amount of information surged into his mind, causing his mind to tremble slightly. Carefully checking the information, Lu Yi had a strange expression. He was quite lucky this time to obtain a spirit rune. However, this spirit rune was different from all the spirit runes he had obtained before. It wasn't that it was complicated. Among the spirit runes that Lu Yi had grasped, the most complicated one was undoubtedly the Fire Phoenix spirit rune, followed by the Void spirit rune. However, he learned the Void spirit rune from a book, so he couldn't construct it as casually as the talent tree. Furthermore, it was just a leaf carrying information, so it couldn't be that complicated. The reason why it was special was because from the information, this spirit rune didn't consume spirit energy, but soul energy. To put it simply, it consumed soul energy. Lu Ye's mind trembled slightly. This was actually a soul spirit rune, which was also a divine rune. The way of spirit runes was broad and profound. What Lu Yi had learned now could be constructed with spirit energy. However, if Lu Ye's cultivation reached the Divine Sea realm and he had his own soul energy, then many spirit runes could be constructed with soul energy and could exert more power. For example, sharpness could be constructed with spirit runes to increase the lethality of spirit runes. However, if it was constructed with soul energy, it could be turned into a soul attack. Defense could also be constructed with soul energy, which could be turned into a soul barrier. However, there were some special spirit runes that could only be constructed with soul energy. Such spirit runes were called divine runes. This time, he obtained a divine rune. Charm. Judging from the information contained in the leaf, this charm divine rune had the effect of confusing people's minds, which was similar to the soul secret skill performed by the fox demon. The soul secret skill of the fox demon was heaven-defying, but that was the innate ability of the six-tailed heavenly fox. It was impossible for ordinary cultivators or demonic beasts to grasp it. If the charm divine rune could exert 10% of the fox demon's soul secret skill's power, it would be extremely impressive. Unfortunately, this was a divine pattern that could only be activated with soul power. Lu Ye's current cultivation level was only at the Cloud River tier, so he couldn't use it at all. He could use his spiritual power to construct the divine pattern, but even if he managed to construct it, it wouldn't be of any use. However, one day, his cultivation would reach the Divine Sea realm. At that time, this divine rune would naturally be of use. Just this divine rune alone had given him a great harvest, not to mention that he had also obtained the blessing of heaven. His luck would probably be even more prosperous in the future. There was also a reward from heaven, but he didn't know what it was. Lu Yi slowly opened his eyes and stood up. Li Baxin was guarding at the side. Seeing him stand up, he asked, "Little junior brother, are you returning to the spirit land?" The fox demon was dead, and the cultivators of Fox Immortal Valley had dispersed. There was no need to return to Fox Immortal Valley. Lu Yi nodded. Suddenly, he remembered something. "Let's make a trip to Fox Immortal Valley. There's something there that I'm interested in." Li Baxin didn't ask what it was. He only nodded. "Okay." Chapter 594. Returning to the Fox Immortal Valley, his state of mind was completely different. So this is the Fox Immortal Valley. It's quite beautiful. Feng Yuechan stood in the air and looked down. In terms of scenery, the Fox Immortal Valley was indeed not bad. After all, it was the place where the fox demon had lived for a long time. However, it was still inferior to the spiritual land. Being used to the beautiful scenery of the spiritual land, Feng Yuechan's evaluation of the Fox Immortal Valley was only quite beautiful. "Junior brother, why are you back here?" Li Baxin asked. "There's a place that I'm a little concerned about," Lu Yi said as he led the way. The few of them followed. A moment later, they arrived at a place enveloped by a large formation. Li Baxin was deep in thought. This is a forbidden area? Although he and Lu Yi had only stayed in the Fox Immortal Valley for more than a month, he had heard of the forbidden area. More than one cultivator had told him that he could go anywhere in the Fox Immortal Valley except for two places. One was the fox demon's bedroom, and no one could enter without permission. The other was the forbidden area in the deepest part of the Fox Immortal Valley. At the very least, there was still a chance to enter the fox demon's bedroom. However, no one in the Fox Immortal Valley knew what was going on in the forbidden area. Even Xie Yunhan, who was in charge of the entire Fox Immortal Valley's formation, did not know. This was because the fox demon had ordered that no one was allowed to set foot in this place, not even within 1,000 feet of it. Li Baxian finally understood why Lu Yi wanted to come back. To be honest, he was also somewhat interested in this forbidden area. Only the unknown could arouse curiosity. Lu Yi stood in front of the formation and observed the nodes of the formation with his eyes enhanced by the insight spirit patterns. A moment later, he raised his hand and threw out a few formation flags. The last time he came, he had relied on his attainments in Formation Dao to sneak into this formation, so he did not cause any damage to this formation. But this time, there was no need. Strictly speaking, the strength of the formation here was not high. To him, cracking it was not difficult. Formation flags were thrown out one by one and embedded into the nodes. Lu Yi raised his hand and pressed on the formation. As he channeled his spirit energy, the spirit energy on the formation's light screen flowed slower and slower until it completely stopped. The weapon box at his waist buzzed, and 9 streams of light shot out one after another, blasting towards a certain part of the formation. Accompanied by cracking sounds like a mirror shattering, spiderweb-like cracks immediately appeared on the formation. After 3 breaths, it completely shattered. The area enveloped by the Great Formation also appeared in their field of vision. A tomb, an ancient altar. Why is there a tomb here? Feng Yuechan curiously went forward to investigate and saw a tombstone erected in front of the grave. There was a line of words on the tombstone. The tomb Feng Yuechan. This Lei Jingyin should be the original master of the fox demon. However, for some unknown reason she was killed by the giant raging ape. Therefore, since 20 years ago, the fox demon began its revenge plan. All these years, it has been collecting cultivators until today. Lu Yi casually explained. Li Baxian said thoughtfully, "Junior brother has been here before?" Lu Yi said, "Once, out of curiosity, I snuck in and happened to bump into a fox demon offering condolences here. I overheard something." "I see." Li Baxian nodded. "This tomb was made by Lu Yi. There's nothing special about it. What I care about is the altar." As Lu Yi spoke, he stepped forward and walked up to the altar. "Senior brother, senior sister Feng, can you see what this altar is for?" Li Baxian and Feng Yuechan walked up together and looked at it carefully. After a while, Li Baxian shook his head. "I can't see, but there are 4 grooves. They should be for spirit stones. Maybe if enough spirit stones are placed, it will open something." "Open what? A secret realm?" Feng Yuechan guessed. Lu Yi and Li Baxian's interest was piqued. If this altar could really open a secret realm, then they wouldn't want to miss it. There were many secret realms in the Cloud River battlefield, so Feng Yuechan's guess might be true. "Let's give it a try," Lu Yi said excitedly. The 4 of them each took a corner, took out spirit stones from their storage bags, and placed them in the grooves. A shocking scene appeared. As soon as the mid-grade spirit stones were placed into the grooves, the spirit energy within them was sucked dry in an extremely short amount of time, turning them into useless stones. After absorbing the spirit chi from the spirit stones, the complex patterns on the surface of the altar lit up a small area. This area only occupied an insignificant part of the entire altar, but it was enough to make Lu Yi and the others' eyes light up. Looking at each other, they each took out more spirit stones and placed them in the grooves. The spirit stones turned into useless stones as their spirit energy was absorbed by the altar. The pattern on the altar lit up more and more. Until a certain moment, when the 4 of them had consumed over 1,000 spirit stones, the surface of the altar shone brightly and all the patterns were completely lit up. At the same time, Lu Yi felt a slight warmth on the back of his hand. He quickly looked down and saw the golden mark on the back of his hand suddenly fly out, turning into a golden light and falling into the altar. In an instant, there was only a dazzling golden light in front of them, blinding them. After a few breaths of time, when Lu Yi and the others' vision recovered, there was an oval-shaped golden light curtain in front of them. Little junior brother, what was that just now? Li Baxin asked in surprise. He had clearly seen the strange phenomenon of the golden mark on the back of Lu Ye's hand falling onto the altar, but he didn't know what the golden mark was or why it had fallen onto the altar. Lu Yi reacted. So this is the reward bestowed by Heaven's secret. When he saw the golden mark, he thought it was the same as the one he had obtained in the hunting ground, so he needed to find a Heaven's secret pillar to investigate, but he did not expect the golden mark to be used to activate the altar. In other words, even if the people from Immortal Fox Valley returned here and found the altar and placed enough spirit stones, without his mark, they would not be able to activate the altar. Heaven's secret's reward, it was bestowed to me after I killed a fox monster, Lu Yi explained simply. Li Baxin was stunned. Heaven's secret bestowed a reward for killing a fox monster? This kind of thing was unheard of. Lu Yi told Li Baxin about his conjecture and the words the fox demon said before it died. Li Baxin nodded and said, if that's the case, junior brother killing the fox demon has indeed eliminated a huge threat on the Cloud River battlefield. It can be considered a blessing. It's understandable that the heavens bestowed a reward. Feng Yuechan's expression changed slightly. Since it is a reward bestowed by Heaven's secret, there must be some benefits. Junior brother Lu, good people are truly rewarded. Lu Yi laughed. His main purpose in killing the fox monster was to save Li Baxin. If it were not for Li Baxin being enslaved by the fox monster, he would have secretly run away. Now that he had encountered so many things, it could be considered a freak combination of factors. Feng Yuechan looked at the golden light curtain with sparkling eyes. I wonder what is behind it? Li Baxin said, you said there are benefits, so there can't be anything bad. Little junior brother, why don't you go in and take a look? Lu Yi nodded, then suddenly thought of something and said, Giant Carapace, have the wolves guard the surroundings. Giant Carapace nodded, raised his hand to his mouth, and whistled loudly. In the next instant, a large pack of monster wolves rushed over under the lead of the alpha wolf, creating a great momentum. Giant Carapace casually drew a circle and said concisely, watch. The wolf pack immediately separated to the left and right, surrounding the area. Lu Yi clicked his tongue in amazement. Although his relationship with the wolf pack was not bad, he could not command them as easily as Giant Carapace. Giant Carapace, lead the way. Lu Yi ordered. Although this was a reward from Heaven's secret and there was most likely no danger, it was still best to be careful. Among them, Giant Carapace's physique was the strongest, so it was naturally better for him to lead the way. Giant Carapace did not say a word, taking large strides towards the golden light curtain, arriving in front of it in a few steps, and plunging in without hesitation. Lu Ye's gaze did not move, only to see a layer of ripples appear on the golden light curtain, which then swallowed Giant Carapace whole. Lu Yi followed closely behind Giant Carapace, followed by Feng Yuechan and Li Baxin. Stepping into the golden light curtain, they instantly entered another world, but this world was hazy with fog. Giant Carapace, who had entered first, was not far in front of them, but under the hazy fog, Lu Yi could not see his figure clearly, only a vague outline. Lu Yi stood in place, his eyes filled with shock. This was because the surrounding environment gave him an incomparably familiar feeling. Behind him, Li Baxin quickly whispered, Heaven's secret baptism? Of the 4 people present, apart from Giant Carapace who had not yet entered the Spirit Stream list, the other 3 had all entered the Spirit Stream list, so the monthly Heaven's secret baptism was naturally not unfamiliar to them. The baptism bestowed by Heaven's fate would lead the cultivators on the Spirit Stream list to a completely independent and unique environment. Inside that unique environment, the cultivator's body and mind would be tempered to a certain degree, and thus become more powerful. It could be said that the future prospects of cultivators who had entered the Spirit Stream list and those who had not were different. Wei Kei was at the 9th Order Cloud River Realm, while Tan Sheng and Xiaoliang were also at the 9th Order Cloud River Realm. Furthermore, without exception, all 3 of them had reached the Cloud River Realm with 360 apertures. However, compared to Tan Sheng and Xiaoliang, Wei Kei's 9th Order strength was not just a little bit weaker. The most fundamental reason was that Tan Sheng and Xiaoliang had both entered the Spirit Stream list before, and their rankings were not low. The spirit stream realm was the initial stage of a cultivator's cultivation, and was also the stage that laid the foundation for their entire cultivation journey. Being able to obtain the Heaven's Secret baptism at this stage would undoubtedly strengthen a cultivator's foundation and allow them to have a brighter future. The higher one's ranking on the spirit stream list, the greater the benefits of the Heaven's Secret baptism would be. When Lu Yi was at the spirit stream realm, he could basically only kill people one level above him. However, after reaching the Cloud River realm, killing people 2 levels above him was not a difficult matter. Admittedly, this was related to the strength of Cloud River realm cultivators, but it was also related to the benefits he had obtained from the spirit stream list. One had to know that the higher a cultivator's cultivation, the more difficult it would be to kill people of a higher level. This was because the higher one's cultivation, the greater the increase in one's strength. Chapter 595. Only cultivators on the spirit stream list had the right to receive the Heavenly Fate baptism. There was no similar Cloud River list on the Cloud River battlefield, and no one had ever heard of a Cloud River tier cultivator receiving the Heavenly Fate baptism. Unexpectedly, Lu Yi and the others encountered it here. From the looks of it, activating the altar didn't lead to the mystery realm as Feng Yuechan had guessed. It was just a pure Heavenly Fate baptism. However, for Lu Yi and the others, this was the best and most practical reward. After a moment of excitement, Lu Yi suddenly realized a problem. He had received the Heavenly Fate baptism 4 times on the Spirit Stream battlefield, and each time, the effects were worse than the last. By the end of the 4th time, the effects were close to nothing. This was also why he had decisively advanced to the Cloud River tier. If he could obtain enough benefits, how could he leave the Spirit Stream battlefield? Not only him, but Li Baxian and Feng Yuechan were also like this. These two had occupied the Spirit Stream list for more than a decade, and they had heard that the Heavenly Fate baptism no longer affected them. They had occupied the Spirit Stream list for more than a decade, and there were no substantial rewards for them. Of the 4 people present, including Hu Pe, only Giant Armor hadn't received the Heavenly Fate baptism. So, even if this place was a Heavenly Fate baptism, would it really be useful to them? If it was useless, then even if this place was a Heavenly Fate baptism, they wouldn't obtain any benefits. Li Baxian obviously also realized this problem, and was already silently refining the power around him. After a short while, his expression became excited. It's useful. Lu Yi also tried. He found that it was indeed as Li Baxian had said. The fog here was slightly different from the Heavenly Fate baptism on the Spirit Stream list. It was obviously more advanced. The Heavenly Fate baptism on the Spirit Stream list was useless to Lu Yi and the others. However, it was useful here. Let's disperse, Lu Yi said. Li Baxian and Feng Yuechan nodded in agreement. Giant Armor sat down cross-legged. He closed his eyes and cultivated. As he breathed, large amounts of dense white fog were sucked into his mouth and into his lungs. Lu Yi walked in a certain direction, but after walking for less than 300 feet, an invisible barrier blocked his path. He raised his hand to test it, and found that the barrier was extremely sturdy. It wasn't something he could shake with his current cultivation, so he turned around and walked to the side. After walking for another few hundred feet as expected, another invisible barrier appeared in front of him. From the looks of it, this place wasn't very big, only a few hundred feet in length and width. Looking back, he could no longer see the figures of Li Baxian and the others. The thick white fog had blocked his line of sight. There was no need to continue exploring. Lu Yi sat down and began to construct a small spirit-gathering funnel on his body. He also came out of Hu Po's body in a flash. She walked to a spot 10 meters away from him and sat down to cultivate. Hu Po opened his mouth wide and began to devour the omnipresent mist. With the enhancement of the small energy-gathering funnels, the surrounding mist was attracted by an invisible force and continuously poured into Lu Ye's body. As the number of small energy-gathering funnels increased, the flow of mist around Lu Ye's body could be seen with the naked eye. His cultivation aptitude was indeed very poor. There was no way for him to inhale and exhale the spiritual chi of heaven and earth normally. He couldn't even draw out the spiritual chi of spirit stones. However, under his unique cultivation method and in such an environment, the benefits he could obtain were incomparable to anyone else. Back in the Dragon Spring, in the soul cleansing pond, he had used this cultivation method to obtain benefits that ordinary people couldn't even imagine. Although he could confirm that the white fog here was of a higher grade than the Spirit Stream list's heavenly mystery baptism, he couldn't tell by how much. Until now. Lu Yi revealed a look of surprise. It was because when the invisible energy from the surroundings surged into his body, every piece of his flesh and blood was wriggling slowly. This was a sign that his physique was strengthening. His mind felt as if it was floating in the clouds. His mind was also strengthening at an extremely impressive speed. Not only that, but the surging power poured into the river of spiritual chi in his body. While the river's volume increased, it also increased the speed of its flow. The heavenly mystery baptism here had the effect of increasing one's cultivation. The heavenly fortune baptism from the Spirit Stream list didn't have such an effect. During the Spirit Stream battlefield, Lu Yi had been baptized by the heavens 4 times, which had strengthened his body and mind. However, none of those baptisms had increased his cultivation base in the slightest. This place was different. Now that he thought about it, it actually made sense. Generally speaking, cultivators who could enter the Spirit Stream list had a cultivation base of the 9th heaven level. Within the Spirit Stream stage, that was the limit. Any higher and one could only reach the Cloud River stage. Therefore, the heavenly mystery baptism of the Spirit Stream battlefield didn't have the effect of increasing one's cultivation base. Lu Yi was the first person in history to enter the Spirit Stream list with a cultivation base of the 7th heaven level, and first place with a cultivation base of the 8th heaven level. It could strengthen one's body and mind, and increase one's cultivation base. This heavenly mystery baptism was much, much better than the Spirit Stream list. He could foresee that after this, his strength would increase significantly. The only thing he didn't know was how long he would be able to cultivate here. Although this was a reward from the heavenly mystery baptism of the Spirit Stream list, it was impossible for him to cultivate here indefinitely. Realizing that, Lu Ye's thirst grew. While the few of them were cultivating here, within Taimong Mountain, 2 figures flew about in a sorry state. They were Xia Liang and Tan Xing. After Lu Yi had killed the demon fox and dispelled the secret soul technique, the 2 of them had realized that they were in a bad situation. They immediately flew into the air and fled. "Brother Xia, let's take a break." Tan Xing gasped for breath. Today's encounter had been like a dream. First, they had fought a bloody battle with an overlord-level monster beast. Before they had fully recovered, they had been besieged by a pack of wolves. The 2 of them were able to survive not entirely due to luck, but more due to their powerful strength. After all, they were at the Cloud River 9th realm. Their foundation wasn't something ordinary cultivators could compare to. Even so, Tan Xing was almost an arrow at the end of its flight. Although Xia Liang still had some strength left, he couldn't hold on for much longer. Seeing Tan Xing's sorry state, he nodded and said, "Then let's take a break." The 2 of them immediately descended and took out some spirit pills to recover their strength. After a while, Tan Xing recovered slightly. With a face full of fear, he said, "I didn't expect that there would be such a monster beast in the Cloud River battlefield." Thinking back to the month he spent in Fox Immortal Valley, Tan Xing felt like he was in a dream. When the Fox Demoness had planted a soul mystic technique in him to enslave his mind, he did not feel anything. It was only when the soul mystic technique was destroyed with the Fox Demoness death that he woke up from his dream. There are many strange things in the world. Although you and I are at the Cloud River realm, we still don't have enough experience. What I don't understand is how Lu Yi got rid of it. Considering everything that had happened before, Lu Yi had never been affected by the Demon Fox Immortal Valley's soul secret technique. Otherwise, he wouldn't have mobilized the wolf pack to attack them. Lu Yi must have planned this for a long time. Otherwise, the timing wouldn't have been so coincidental. It happened when the Fox Immortal Valley was fighting the Overlord monster beasts and their strength was greatly damaged. Xia Liang was also thinking about this problem. He voiced his suspicion, there is only one possibility. That guy's soul is strong enough to resist the demon fox's soul secret technique. The corner of Tan Sheng's eyes twitched. He's only at the Cloud River 4th realm. Even if his soul is strong, how strong can it be? Although he said that, he knew that this was the only reasonable explanation. The demon fox probably didn't expect that she would die at the hands of the weakest cultivator in the Fox Immortal Valley. Lu did many things on the Spirit Stream battlefield that ordinary people can't do. He can't be underestimated. Since the last time, Xia Liang had done an in-depth study of Lu Ye. When he saw all kinds of information about Lu Ye, he was really shocked. Since ancient times, there had never been a cultivator who could stir up such a big storm on the Spirit Stream battlefield. He had even single-handedly caused the sects in the core region to suffer again and again. Since ancient times, there had never been a cultivator with a Heaven 8th realm cultivation that occupied the Spirit Stream first place. Before this trip, he had already warned himself not to underestimate Lu Ye. But now, it seemed that he had underestimated him. 3 Cloud River 9th realm cultivators had come together for revenge. Now that Wei Kei was dead, the two of them had fled like stray dogs. Tan Sheng chuckled. Does this count as him saving our lives? Xia Liang coldly snorted. Brother Tan, do you still want to be grateful to him? Tan Sheng's expression turned cold. How is that possible? He killed my New Moon Sect's disciples and destroyed my New Moon Sect's station. How could I forget? It's just that revenge is as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Even if they now knew the location of Lu Ye's spirit land, so what? The spirit land was covered by a spirit array and was guarded by a pack of wolves. Not to mention the two of them, even if they found dozens of helpers, they might not be able to succeed. With their connections, they would be able to find so many helpers. Even if there were hundreds of them, they would still be able to find them. But even so, could they really take down the spirit land and kill Lu Ye? Even if they could, they would definitely suffer heavy casualties. Xia Liang clenched his fists, his knuckles cracking. He couldn't understand how Lu Ye could command such a pack of wolves. He also remembered how he had carefully guided Lu Ye's cultivation of the saber every day in Fox Immortal Valley. He had even taught him the Heart's Eye secret technique. The sullen feeling in his heart was about to overturn rivers and seas. That dog wasn't affected by the soul secret technique at all, but he used a chicken feather as an arrow to ask him for advice on saber techniques. He was so stupid to teach him everything he knew. It's not just the two of us who want to take his life in Myriad Demon Ridge. Xia Liang tried to calm down and said lightly. Brother Xia, you mean? Tan Sheng said thoughtfully. If we secretly spread the location of Lu Ye's spirit land, there will always be people who will find trouble with him, especially those large spirit lands. In order to expand the scale of the spirit land and improve the grade of the spirit land, they are plundering spring spirits everywhere. The grade A spring spirits are very attractive to them, and with Lu Ye. He suddenly paused. I remember that there is a spirit land nearby that is dominated by Sacred Flame Sect cultivators. The Sacred Flame Sect hates the Jade Blood Sect more than anyone else. If those lunatics know Lu Ye's whereabouts, what do you think they will do? You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.